Chapter 871. Fire City was running low on food. Liszt still took some time to transport supplies to support the construction of Fire City. At the same time, he also celebrated his follower, Emily, for successfully becoming a Sky Knight. He handed the Advanced Thunder Attribute Battle Energy Manual, 15 kg Thunder Sky Flash, to the young girl. Emily, the glory of the night has blessed you. You have inherited my glory and become the youngest Sky Knight in the Sapphire, Flame, and even the entire legendary continent. No, it is the glory of your highness that has blessed me, Emily replied in a clear voice. Haha, that's too high profile. Liszt smiled and rubbed the head of the young girl, who was already 1.7 meters tall. Although her figure was still flat, the young girl's face was more and more delicate, with a hint of exotic charm. Female Sky Knights are very rare. I hope you can continue to climb to the peak. Emily will definitely become what your highness has been looking forward to. I will follow your highness back and never stop. The young girl was talking about the Dragon Knight. This was Liszt's expectations for her. Looking at the determination on the young girl's face and the vitality that her body exuded, he sighed. Perhaps this is youth. Emily, I don't have a suitable weapon to give you as a gift. This swift shadow bow has accompanied me in battle for a period of time. I'll give it to you in hopes that you can find the time to practice your archery skills. After becoming a Dragon Knight, Liszt had not used archery for a long time. The swift shadow bow was completely useless. Emily took the swift shadow bow excitedly. Her vivid expression conveyed her inner feelings to Liszt. She was willing to sacrifice anything for Liszt, whether it was a sword or a bedsheet. In the following time, Liszt was given another title. Emily was made a Viscount for training the giant elephant orders of chivalry and building the Jade Firewood Avenue. The other knight were also promoted according to their contributions. Basically, as long as there was an opportunity, Liszt would give followers. The Flame Archipelago was too big, and what he lacked was followers to help him develop it. After leaving the Flaming Island, Liszt calculated the time and found that it was almost April. Judging from the movement of the Dragon Knight of the Eagle Kingdom, it was about to reach the Grand Duchy of Sapphire. In order to show that he was relaxed and unguarded, he even made a big trip to Iron Hoof Island to inspect his territory, Iron Hoof City. Viscount Fox, Baron Gort, Baron Blair. All of you need to make preparations as soon as possible to recruit more knight to migrate to Blazing Island. Countless military achievements are waiting for you. You can poach knight from all over Iron Hoof Island and promise them titles. Liszt still felt that the Sapphire Knight was more convenient to use. He would take as many as he had. At the banquet, Gort livened up the atmosphere. Even if Liszt did not like to drink, it was rare for him to drink a few cups of fresh flower wine. Taking advantage of the hot atmosphere, Gort smiled and said, Your Highness, the development of Iron Hoof City is on the right track. I have not been bathed in your glory for a long time, which makes me very anxious. I miss the time I spent with you all the time. I wonder when your Highness will let me go to Blazing Island? But I think your life in Iron Hoof City is also very comfortable. Liszt joked. Gort's wife and children all lived in Black Horse Island, and all of his children had entered the official class of the territory. Liszt, on the other hand, was living a leisurely life in Iron Hoof City with his lover Freya, whom he met in Flower Town, and his illegitimate son Donald. No matter how good it is, it can't compare to the time spent following your highness. Well, when the time comes, you will all go to Blazing Island to temporarily manage Iron Hoof City and do a good job in transporting knight. Liszt stopped Gort's flattery, raised his glass and said, My followers, glory belongs to me, I am with you. To the glory of your highness. After inspecting Iron Hoof Island, Liszt went to Tulip Castle, where he gathered with Madame Penelope, the Marquis of Oxdale, and other relatives to talk about the development of Blazing Island and Tulip Island. Before leaving, Madame Penelope once again asked her servants to bring a potted plant. List, my dear young man, you have become a dragon knight, have a vast land, and the sprites are flying towards you. But this is grandmother's intention, the embodiment of the glory of the night. The magic eyes swept over and the potted plants did not breed sprite worms, but he still smiled and took it. I will take good care of these potted plants and look forward to them breeding more sprites for me. The elder sister Elvira said with a smile. List, next month, I hope you can attend my wedding with Hibbert Basil. Hibbert Basil was the son of the Count of Long White Island and was a suitable match for Elvira. After more than a year of contact, Elvira had already recognized this Earth Knight, who was 1 year younger than her. Their relationship had progressed to the point where they were about to enter the wedding, which could be regarded as a wonderful marriage. Of course I will attend. List was not very fond of his elder sister, but he also did not deliberately alienate her. If you are willing, Basil family can come to the Blazing Islands to develop. It is great that you can attend the wedding. I will have a proper discussion with Hibbert. Father also hopes that we can go to the Blazing Islands. Lee William naturally hoped that his children would go to the Blazing Islands. The reason was very simple. List had the three-headed dragon and the arch-wizard He, whose development potential far surpassed that of the Grand Duchy of Sapphire. One dragon and three-headed dragon, even thinking with their toes, they knew where to go. The Knight of the Tulip family has not been successful in establishing the Tulip Island. Although you have the support of the Moonkiller serfs, there is a lack of food on the island. In order to hunt for World of Warcraft, many knight have already been sacrificed. Lee William sent his father off while pouring out his grievances to his son, who was becoming more and more unfamiliar with him. Father, don't worry, the difficulties are only temporary. After a period of time, you will realize that things will suddenly become clear. Lee William was skeptical. Is that so? Of course, when have you ever seen me joke? That's true. Lee William wanted to say that every time they talked, it seemed like a joke. However, every seemingly impossible joke actually happened. 4 years ago, how could he have imagined that his cowardly, good-for-nothing second son, who had nothing but his handsome face, would grow to such a height that could cover the sky and cover the sun? Therefore, a voyage of 7,000 kilometers seemed to be a huge difficulty. But since List said it, he believed it. Leaving Tulip Castle, List returned to Thorn Castle and rested for a night, then set out for the Dodo Island. He planned to spend the whole of April between the Dodo Island and the Black Horse Island to attract the Eagle Kingdom to attack him. He could not do anything with peace of mind until the crisis in the shadows was resolved. He would rather spend a month with the Eagle Kingdom to solve the problem once and for all. Just as List began to use himself as bait, the Earl of the Hot Spring Island sent his knight to block a corner of the island, forbidding anyone from entering or leaving. Only his own servants could drive the carriage. Every day, they pulled a lot of supplies and transported them to the corner of the island. Such a piece of information, which would have been inconspicuous at other times, was discovered by the mice commanded by Xavier. Then the news was sent to List. Chapter 872. It was not difficult to assassinate the Dragon Knight, but it was difficult to assassinate the dragon, because there was a subtle connection between dragons, especially when the dragon magic was fully activated. The connection between dragons was especially strong. Only an elemental dragon could hide from this connection. To assassinate the Dragon Knight, the Dragon Knight only needed to leave the dragon temporarily and not receive the dragon's warning and timely support. After all, it was impossible for the Dragon Knight to stay with the dragon all the time, even when sleeping and eating. If I sneak into Hot Spring Island, the invisible dragon is likely to be sensed. At that time, the Dragon Knight will immediately react, and I may have to face 2 Dragon Knight. It is not very safe to fight 2 Dragon Knight head-on. Although I am not afraid, I may not be able to intercept them. List was now riding the invisible dragon Bard, and the little fire dragon Leo was also attached to his body. The magic shooter He had been living with him. Only the light green gemstone dragon could not hide, nor could it pursue him for thousands of miles. He left it in the Jade Mountain to continue guarding the Jade Mine and sleeping. With his current combat power configuration, he could barely kill a Dragon Knight by sneak attack. It was really difficult to kill two Dragon Knight head-on. In particular, he did not know for the time being who the two Dragon Knight were, and whether it was a powerful dragon like the White Iron Dragon. Moreover, if a Dragon Knight rushed over while the battle was going on, he would not be able to steal a chicken and would instead alert the enemy. After careful consideration, he rejected the idea of sneak attack in advance. Forget it, according to the original plan, I will think of a way to sneak attack and intercept them when they retreat. I will be patient for the time being. After all, his strength was still developing. If the fire dragon and invisible dragon were all adult, there was no need to keep a low profile. No matter how many Dragon Knights came, he would kill them all. No matter how many Dragon Knights there were, they were all going to be food. Unlike now, with the advance warning of the smoke mission, he still had to carefully play with schemes. He calculated the food supply of Hot Spring Island. By April 2nd, there was already enough food to transport 5 dragons to the sealed area. In the next few days, the food supply did not increase. List waited on the Dodo Island and understood. 5 dragons and 3 knights. Such a scale is indeed luxurious. They are really giving me face. The Prince of the Eagle Kingdom, the Knight of the White Iron Dragon, Alex White Iron. The Marquis of the Eagle Kingdom, the Bronze Dragon Knight, Alonso Cipher. The Grand Duke of the Purple Copper Grand Duchy, the Purple Copper Dragon Knight, Lloyd Purple Copper. It was a silver dragon raised by the royal family of the Eagle Kingdom. The Duke of the Duchy of Greyiron, Piero Greyiron, and the Greyiron Dragon he didn't ride. I also have to count the Grand Duchy of Sapphire, the Sapphire Dragon Knight, and Andrew Sapphire. That's 6 dragons and 4 knights. I have to be careful. Hot Springs Island. Alex sat in the center of the tent, with Alonso, Lure and Piero on his left and right. There was also a middle-aged man. He was the Eagle King's trusted butler and also the breeder of the Silver Dragon. He was temporarily in charge of communicating with the Silver Dragon. The surroundings of the tent were empty. Only these 5 people were discussing. Is the investigation clear? Yes, List often travels between Black Horse Island and Dodo Island. According to the time, he will practice on Dodo Island all day tomorrow. Should we wait and find out more? A long night brings many dreams. Waiting is just a waste of time. And with Andrew's cunning, it will be difficult for him to continue to ignore our actions. Maybe he will find an opportunity to send a letter to List, so that List can cause us more trouble. In my opinion, we should kill Andrew first, then turn around and kill List directly, and clear the blue sea. We lost the opportunity last time. If we move against Andrew again, the Iron and Steel Ridge will never let it go. This time, it is only against List, so the Iron and Steel Ridge and our country have a tacit understanding, so I was able to withdraw from the front line. If we move against Andrew, I am afraid a new dragon-slaying war will happen, Alonso said calmly. Of course, he wanted to destroy the Grand Duchy of Sapphire. After all, the worst battle of his life was the Battle of Sapphire, but there were some rules that even the Dragon Knight did not dare to break easily. Iron and Steel Ridge, Blast Furnace Castle, and Eagle. Once the balance of the 3 countries was broken, the situation would be very difficult. Alex finally decided, don't have any ideas about Andrew, at least not in the near future. Killing List, snatching the Fire Dragon, and recapturing the light green Sapphire Dragon is our top priority. And that Archmage, we must catch him and make up for the loss of the Eagle Kingdom. Prince Alex, the value of the Archmage is inestimable. I think the Eagle Kingdom will not go back on its word, right? Lure said softly. Of course, Grand Duke Lure, rest assured that the royal family will share the knowledge of magic with you. So when do we start? Tomorrow. The next day before dawn. Alonso had already gotten up and was feeding the bronze dragon affectionately. He did not sleep well last night, but now he had adjusted his mood. There was no longer any excitement or apprehension, and he had also forgotten the previous humiliation. All that was left was the persistence for this dragon-slaying battle. Old friend, it's time to use the wind and thunder to prove that you and I are worthy of the name of the Dragon Knight. Humph! The bronze dragon did not roar. It only breathed out 2 puffs of air from its nose to express its desire for battle. It also remembered the humiliation of the last dragon-slaying battle. As a noble dragon, it actually ran away with its tail between its legs. If it did not take revenge, it would not be a dragon. After a while, Duke Piero came over with his gray-mouthed iron dragon. Your Highness Alonso, the gray-mouthed iron dragon is temporarily under your command. I hope it will be covered with glory when it returns. Please rest assured, Your Highness, this dragon-slaying battle will definitely be a happy one. On the other side, Lure was also feeding his bronze dragon. Prince Alex took care of the white iron dragon and silver dragon. The silver dragon breeder was only responsible for raising the silver dragon and could not command the silver dragon to fight, so he needed the Dragon Knight to command it. As a member of the royal family, Alex was also an old friend of the silver dragon and was not unfamiliar with it. So, after determining the attack plan and time, the 3 Dragon Knight and the 5 dragons quickly escaped into the darkness before dawn. The dragon's wings flapped, the clouds rolled, and a mighty dragon-slaying operation began early in the morning of April 7th, 155 of the Sapphire calendar. However, these Dragon Knight did not know. There were rats staring at them. When the carriages transported food ahead of schedule in the middle of the night, the rats had already reported to an inn in a small town nearby. The magician hiding in the inn immediately used the magic platform to send a message to the island of Fairy. Food was transported in the early hours of the morning, just enough for a full meal. The rats did not dare to approach and did not notice any other movements. Achi, who was sleeping lightly, quickly received the message from the magic platform and woke up. List. Brother, there is a message. Today may be the day of the Eagle Kingdom's raid. Is it coming? It's earlier than I expected, but the sooner they come, the sooner we can solve it. List rubbed his face. He was not nervous at all. On the contrary, he felt a sense of relief. Without knowing the date of the attack, his emotions were always tense and could not be released. Once the time was determined, it was as if a heavy burden had been lifted. Pushing open the window of the wooden house, it was dark outside. But the air was exceptionally fresh. This was the fragrance brought by the new human skull saplings struggling to germinate from the volcanic ash. Smelling the fresh air, List stretched without caring about his image. Chapter 873. The distance from the hot spring island to the Dodo Island was not short. List had enough time to take a nap, wash up, eat a hearty breakfast, and put on his equipment. The Dragon Spear Thunder Fury was kept in the space ring, the Armor Thunder Roar was on his body, and the Ice Soul Dragon Slaying Sword hung on his waist. In addition to all kinds of gemstone accessories that increased strength, recovery speed, combat energy, and so on, as well as the red, black, and golden tricolored cloak, he looked majestic. Achi was still wearing the magic cloak, and also had all kinds of gemstone accessories on her body. These gemstone accessories were made from the gemstones sent by the Iron and Steel Ridge royal family. She also held a long sword in her hand. This was the 8 Dragons' divine sword. In the end, List did not wear this sword, but gave it to Achi to use. The reason was very simple. The 8 Dragons' divine sword was not so much a sword, but a magic staff. It was originally the weapon of the ancient magic shooters, and it had a strong enhancement to the 8 attributes of magic. In Achi's hands, the 8 dragons' divine sword could be maximized. He himself rode a dragon to fight, and with the dragon spear as a means of attack, it was easier for him to become one with the dragon. Brother, with the magic enhancement of the 8 dragons' divine sword, the power of Achi's water and ice magic will be even greater. It will definitely reach the level of supreme magic, and it will also cause great damage to the Dragon Knight. Achi felt the enhancement of the 8 dragons' divine sword to her elemental incarnation, and said confidently. The little siren who was chased by the young 6-headed king sea serpent, Tulamikita, and hid by the reef and cried silently, had become a confident great magic shooter who stood at the peak of magic. There was no longer a trace of timidity. But you still have to focus on support. Don't rashly participate in the battle of the Dragon Knight. After all, you haven't invested much in magic development, and your fighting methods are not rich enough. List reminded. Achi's water elemental incarnation had developed 3 super magic chainsaw, super high-pressure water knife, spiral super high-pressure water drill, and centrifugal water molecular shield. The ice elemental incarnation had only developed 1 super magic super compressed ice shield. It was to compress ice infinitely into a shield. It was not very technical, but the defense of the shield was very strong. Especially in terms of physical attack defense, it was the best of all defensive spells. Space elemental incarnation. He had only just perfectly grasped it, but he had barely managed to develop a super spell, Vector Slash. This spell was developed by imitating the invisible dragon's dragon breath, which used the method of cutting through space to deal damage. Apart from that, there was also the basic super spell, Eye of Magic. Achi knows how to protect herself. Don't worry, big brother. During the battle, Achi will cast a water shield and an ice shield for Big Brother and Bart. I won't let the Dragon Knight hurt you. Then, Achi will use advanced magic to create a battlefield and wait for the right opportunity to attack the Dragon Knight. And List smiled as he used the head-touching killer. He was not afraid of touching Achi until she went bald. Let's go, let's fight. The serfs working on the Dodo Island didn't know that an unprecedented dragon-slaying battle was about to take place. They were busy building the town's foundation. Their lord had already risen into the sky on the dragon, flying above the material boundary, constantly patrolling the waters around the Dodo Island, trying to discover the invading Dragon Knight in advance. It was unknown what principle of sensing was used between dragons. Even if it hid in the material boundary, the invisible dragon would still be sensed by other dragons at close range, but the distance of being sensed would be shortened. This greatly reduced its sneak attack ability. Otherwise, List would have already made his move. I expected that the Eagle Kingdom's means of attack would be an encirclement, so I intend to find a path first and see if I can kill the other party in a short time, he said to Achi. Before his voice fell, his heart suddenly thumped. The invisible dragon had already sensed the dragon's magic aura. It was right in front of the sea, flying in the direction of the Dodo Island. Let's go. List was not a hesitant person. When he discovered the enemy, he immediately communicated with Bart to rush toward the opponent. Flying like a flash, in the blink of an eye, the dragon's perception became clearer and clearer. The other party had probably also sensed the invisible dragon. But this did not stop List's enterprising spirit. Suddenly, in the vision of the crystal white orbit, a bright magic color suddenly appeared. It was the light of magic retroaction, like a metallic copper luster, and also flashing a faint purple. Purple Copper Dragon Knight, lure Purple Copper. He had already recognized the identity of the other party. At this time, the Purple Copper Dragon Knight's flying speed was not fast, and its posture had begun to adopt a defensive posture, and it looked around nervously. It should have sensed the dragon, but it could not capture the dragon in its vision, which made it puzzled. It did not capture the figure and aura of other dragons around it. In other words, Lure was acting alone. With such a heaven-sent opportunity, how could Liszt give up? Go, 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 spiral maneuver charge. The human and the dragon's mind were in harmony, and each had only one thought, and that was to attack. Instead of taking the usual straight line, he adopted a spiral sprint to blur his position in the dragon's perception. The distance was shortened bit by bit, and the perception between the dragons had become extremely profound. The purple copper dragon knight in the crystal white orbit and the subtle flow of magic were all imprinted into Liszt's mind. This was undoubtedly revealing to him the purple copper dragon knight's next move. He's circulating a lot of mana. This means that he's prepared for a thunderous strike. Looks like Lure isn't as nervous as he appears. As expected of a rare dark element dragon knight. His pretentious methods are very compatible with combat aura. Unfortunately, you've met me. Lure's information quickly flashed in his mind. The dark attribute dragon knight's chi was full of corrosive and sticky properties, and it could not be dispelled like venom. Once hit, the dark attribute chi would be like maggots attached to the bone, causing continuous damage. But no matter how strange it was still a physical attack. For the invisible dragon that could enter the material boundary at will, it was not much of a threat. The fury of thunder was raised, and one dragon and one human advanced in the spiral. Chi and magic constantly resonated and accumulated, and the move, Ghost, was ready to be launched. Close. They were about to make contact. At this time, Liszt could see the coldness in Lure's eyes, as if he had already expected this sudden attack. Without waiting for Liszt to stab with the dragon's spear, Lure waved the dragon's spear in his hand. It was a long spear that was as black as ink, black from head to tail. Go to hell! Lure roared, and the dragon's spear pierced the air without making any sound, as if even sound was corroded by the dark attribute chi. In the face of this spear containing the violent power of death, Liszt just glanced at it faintly. One human and one dragon had already flashed away from the attack path, arriving at the back of the purple copper dragon knight. The fury of thunder stabbed out. Ghost strike. A light touch. Blood light bloomed like a rose. Roar! The purple copper dragon let out a miserable roar, and the tip of the fury of thunder's spear cut open a huge gash on the dragon's spine, so deep that bones could be seen. Dragon blood spurted out, flying over the sea. The 35 meters long and 35 meters wingspan purple copper dragon was much larger than the 15 meters long and 15 meters wingspan invisible dragon, but it was the purple copper dragon that was injured. Most of the time, body shape was not the standard of combat power. Lure's face instantly turned purplish red, and his eyes spewed fire as he roared, "Impudent!" The pitch-black dragon's spear directly moved, fiercely smashing toward the exposed invisible dragon. Dark attribute magic bloomed, and circles of black fluctuations flickered, but what it smashed was an afterimage. Chapter 874. Turn around. Dig. Liszt rode the invisible dragon bard, and after Lure's angry attack, he flashed in front of the purple copper dragon again. Wrath of thunder, wrapped in the invisible dragon's magic power and his own chi, violently poured out at the tip of the spear and fiercely performed the move, sonic boom. The tip of the spear did not produce a real sonic boom, but it bloomed a flower of blood on the purple copper dragon's neck. Otherwise, it would have pierced through the purple copper dragon's neck. At the same time, Bard suddenly turned his head and took advantage of the process of brushing shoulders to spit out a dragon's breath on the purple copper dragon's face. The white mist that could cut through space was like a knife hitting the fine scales on the purple copper dragon's face, making crackling sounds like beans being fried. Achi also took advantage of the opportunity to attack. She grabbed Liszt's armor with one hand and held the 8 dragons' divine sword with the other, gently waving it. A super spell, Vector Cut, hit the purple copper dragon knight Lure. Compared to the huge purple copper dragon, attacking the Dragon Knight was obviously more effective. However, the location of the Dragon Tooth Terrace itself was very hidden and could shelter the knight very well. When the vector cut was about to hit Lure, a purple metallic luster flashed, and Lure's whole body was plated with a layer of metallic copper. Bang clang! The sound of metal cutting drowned out the sound of the beans being fried. At the critical moment, the purple copper dragon also stirred up its magic power and plated the surface of its body with a layer of metallic copper, just in time to stop the violent blow from the invisible Dragon Knight. The two dragons flashed past each other. Once again, the purple copper dragon was injured. However, the purple copper dragon was strong, had rough skin and thick flesh, and could also be plated with metallic copper for defense. After passing by, it endured the severe pain of the wound, turned its head, and spat out a metallic torrent of dragon breath at the place where the invisible dragon had escaped into the material boundary. Dragon breath was a special kind of magic product. The dragon breath of different dragons was completely different. The fire dragon was a high-temperature flame, the light green gem dragon was a hail-like flow of crystal particles, and the invisible dragon was a mist that shattered space. The purple copper dragon's dragon breath was a metallic torrent, a special metal liquid formed in the form of magic power, and it was full of impact. After coming into contact with the air, it quickly turned into droplet-shaped metallic copper and shot out faster than bullet. Shio 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 shio. The densely packed sound of bullets piercing through the air was like a swarm of wasps flying past. The buzzing irritated his ears to the point of numbness. However, the torrent of metal turned into a rain of metal bullets, still unable to attack the invisible Dragon Knight that escaped into the material boundary. Lloyd's counterattack with his dragon's spear also missed. Damn it! His temper seemed to have been ignited, but his eyes became even colder. He didn't think too much about how the fire Dragon Knight that he was supposed to face turned into the elusive Dragon Knight. He only concentrated on searching for traces of the invisible dragon and looking for a way to deal with it. He was confident in his own strength. As long as I catch you, I'll send you back to the Dragon Valley in one strike. However, before he could vent his emotions, the invisible dragon once again appeared behind the purple copper dragon through a spiral maneuver. The fury of thunder stabbed crazily. This was the poison dragon move. It used the power of drilling as the main form of expression. It aimed at the soft abdomen of the purple copper dragon and launched a series of fierce attacks. The invisible dragon took the opportunity to spit out a dragon breath that shattered the air and sprayed it toward the dragon's abdomen. Achi adopted another attack method, switching to the super magic, chainsaw super high-pressure water knife. A huge crystal white water knife suddenly condensed in the vast sky and slashed down at the purple copper dragon. Roar! The purple copper dragon's reaction could not be said to be slow, but it was still impossible to guard against. When the poison dragon had already pierced its lower abdomen, it panicked and plated copper on the surface of its body. Unfortunately, at this moment, the tip of the Fury of Thunder's spear had already burst into a flower of blood, and it constantly drilled inwards until it was blocked. It was such a delay, but Lloyd sneered. "Caught you!" He raised the black dragon spear in his hand high, and the purple copper dragon skillfully turned around, forming a situation where the invisible dragon was above and below. Then, the black dragon's spear stabbed out from the gap between its wings. At this time, a magic fluctuation that made Lloyd's heart palpitate suddenly came from behind. He didn't pay attention to what was happening behind him and just continued to stab with the black dragon's spear. He wanted to kill List first. Just as the black dragon's spear was about to hit the invisible dragon and had not had time to escape into the material boundary, a bright white light suddenly appeared, and the air quickly froze and condensed into a glittering transparent shield. Boom! The ice shield only blocked for a second before it was shattered under the powerful attack of the black dragon spear. But in this second, the invisible dragon had already escaped into the material boundary again. Achi, who was on its back, raised the 8 dragons' divine sword high, and the originally gray blade flickered with a bright blue and white light. That was the amplification of water and ice magic which was activated. She was not arrogant when she said that she wanted to protect List. She had perfect mastery of elemental incarnation, and her super magic was also instantaneous. The high mages were able to rule the world in ancient times, and it was not a joke. Their confidence came from absorbing the powerful magic power of the weave. Lloyd couldn't believe that he was actually blocked by an ice shield. His attack was once again useless, and the sense of crisis behind him was getting heavier and heavier. The next moment, there was no time to react. A scorching air current descended, and it was as if it had taken a magma bath in an instant. The scales of the purple copper dragon were almost melted by the high temperature. Then, a huge weight slammed into the purple copper dragon, causing its body to tumble. It was unable to fly steadily, and it fell down in a free-fall trajectory. "Good job, Leo," List laughed. As early as the invisible dragon appeared, he released the little fire dragon Leo. He was the main attacker, and Leo took advantage of the situation to launch a sneak attack. At this moment, Leo's performance was perfect, and the results were very gratifying. How could the purple copper dragon, which had lost its stability, avoid the powerful sneak attack of the invisible dragon knight? Bard rushed out of the material boundary and went straight to the purple copper dragon. The fury of thunder roared again, and it ruthlessly struck the snow mountain again. It was like a landslide, and it exploded on the purple copper dragon's shoulder blade, directly damaging one of its wings and making it even more difficult to maintain its balance. "Charge! Bard! Leo! Achi! Get rid of it!" Once in a fighting state, List quickly turned into a violent output stream. He didn't know what was roundabout and what was holding back, and he just did it. Leo kept colliding with the purple copper dragon, and Bard kept flashing. He held the dragon's spear and stabbed with all kinds of stabs. Achi released water and ice shields for Leo and Bard from time to time, protecting them from the occasional counterattack of the purple copper dragon knight. She also took the time to release vector cuts or high-pressure water knives and water drills. In the next few minutes, List, Bard, Leo, Achi, 2 people and 2 dragons madly besieged the purple copper dragon knight. From a height of 4,000 meters, the purple copper dragon knight was beaten to a height of several hundred meters, and it was still beating down. Even though the purple copper dragon was constantly gilding it and lure, it still couldn't withstand the damage. Along the way there was constant bleeding and screams. The metal dragon's powerful defense could only ensure that it wouldn't be seriously injured, but it couldn't guarantee that it would struggle and escape, especially when it fell to a height of 100 meters. The originally calm sea water, under the control of Achi's talent, instantly seemed to wake up giant pythons. Countless water tornadoes roared and rushed into the sky, tightly wrapping around the purple copper dragon. It restrained its last struggle, and it could only rely on the copper to protect itself. At this moment, "Lure, you're dead." List held the dragon's spear, Thunder Fury, with both hands and used the move with the strongest instantaneous explosive power, Sonic Boom. Stop! There was a deafening roar in the distance, but a new dragon knight rushed over. It was a huge gray dragon that looked like it was cast from steel. Its wings covered the sky and shone with a metallic brilliance. The White Iron Dragon Knight, Alex White Iron, had arrived. However, his shout did not have any deterrent effect. List's hand didn't shake at all, and Thunder Fury stabbed the copper-plated lure. The defense of the copper was strong, but the impact of Thunder Fury was even stronger. The tip of the spear constantly bloomed with mixed fire and spatial magic, burning, tearing, and forcibly breaking the copper. Poochie! Human blood splattered. Lure, who had just heaved a sigh of relief because of Alex's arrival, had already been pierced through the chest by the dragon's spear. Violent magic poured out in an instant, wreaking havoc in his chest. Under the gaze of the crystal-white orbit vision, Lure's dark magic could no longer be maintained, and it started to dissipate. He was dead. After Carl Violet, he became the second Dragon Knight to die in List's hands. The dignified ruler of a country, the Grand Duke of the Purple Copper Grand Duchy, had fallen in a dragon-slaying battle that no one was watching. After killing Lure, List didn't stop, and he quickly summoned Leo to transform into his magic form, and he attached it to his chest. Then, he controlled the invisible dragon bard, and released the purple copper dragon whose body was constantly strengthening and could no longer cause damage. He quietly escaped into the material boundary and retreated into the distance. This burst of power consumed a lot of energy. Chapter 875. This chapter is My Horse Feeds the Sheep. Bang bang. The purple copper dragon fell into the sea and gulped down a few mouthfuls of salty water. After the surface of its body was covered with copper, it struggled to fly up from the sea. In order to come to the sea for the dragon-slaying battle, these dragons had learned basic swimming. Except for the fire elemental dragon like the fire dragon, the other dragons could probably learn to swim. On its dragon tooth platform, Lure had not been freed from the copper state. He was still plated with a layer of purple metal copper. He held the black dragon's spear in his hand and maintained his posture when he was alive. He was already dead. There was no longer any vitality. However, the purple copper dragon did not give up on him. It just flew into the sky with a sad expression and met up with the white iron dragon knight. It let out a loud roar. Lure! Alex approached the purple copper dragon and shouted. There was no response. Alex was startled. He thought of a very bad situation, and he saw with his own eyes that the transparent crystal-like dragon thrust a dragon spear from its back and pierced Lure's chest. In a very short time, it pulled out the dragon's spear and disappeared without a trace. Lure! He called again, but there was still no response. Roar! The purple copper dragon's roar was full of desolation, which made Alex understand that Lure was already dead. Although it was unbelievable, it was the truth. Impossible! Alex's face was gloomy, and he was extremely angry. He and Lure were the Prince of the Eagle Kingdom and the Grand Duke of the Purple Copper Grand Duchy. They had known each other since childhood. They had also been selected for the Dragon Knight candidate program of the Eagle Kingdom, but Lure inherited the Purple Copper family's dragon. There may have been some stumbles, but friendship was also established. Moreover, the relationship between the two countries had always been very good. This time, they responded to the dragon-slaying battle together. They even drank and chatted happily yesterday. Today was an eternal farewell. Suppressing his sadness and anger, Alex shouted coldly, "Purple Copper Dragon, follow me and avenge Lure. After I kill that despicable beast, List, I will personally send Lure's body back to the Purple Copper Grand Duchy." Roar! The Purple Copper Dragon's body was full of wounds. The originally beautiful purple metal scales were mostly rotten. Some were shredded by the dragon breath, some were burned by the high-temperature dragon breath, some were torn apart by the dragon spear, and some were damaged by the magic water blades and water drills. His wounds were no longer bleeding, and his muscles were slowly healing. His powerful regenerative abilities were on full display. However, it had used up a lot of its magic power, especially those special dragon supreme demons. They had been heavily damaged by the repeated copper plating, causing its combat power to plummet. Only his spirit was excited, wanting to avenge his knight. Unlike the light green sapphire dragon knight Carl Low Violet, the light green sapphire dragon was a dragon raised by the Eagle royal family. Carl Low was only a chosen knight and had nothing to do with the first-generation Dragon Knight. On the other hand, the Copper Dragon Knight Lure was a descendant of the first-generation Dragon Knight and had a close relationship with the dragon. However, at this moment, Alex and the three-headed dragon searched everywhere, but they couldn't find any trace of List. The three-headed dragon could vaguely sense the invisible dragon's aura, but the distance between the auras had already become far, making it impossible to clearly determine its position. It could only vaguely sense a direction. He went that way, it's the Dodo Island. Alonso's direction, let's chase after him. Alex's eyes flashed, realizing List's plan. He was addicted to killing the lone Dragon Knight, and he still wanted to intercept and kill the Bronze Dragon Knight. However, not only was Alex not nervous, he felt that this was a godsend opportunity, because Alonso wasn't acting alone. There was also a gray iron dragon following him. There were many types of iron dragons, and according to the type of iron ore they produced, they could be divided into 5 types: white iron dragon, mash iron dragon, gray iron dragon, white iron dragon, and black iron dragon. Their combat power was very strong, and they were the strongest among the metal dragons. Especially in terms of body size, they were usually more than 60 meters long. The Dodo Island was in sight. It would be impossible for Alonso Immortal to say that he wasn't proud. Under his plan, List had already become a turtle in a jar, and he was only waiting for the old hunter to personally come and capture him. But he soon discovered that something was wrong. According to the plan, he would be the second to arrive at the Dodo Island and join the battle, but there was no dragon-slaying battle on the Dodo Island. Everything on the island was very calm, except for a group of serfs who were working, who suddenly pointed to the sky and exclaimed. They saw the bronze dragon and gray iron dragon getting closer and closer. Even though they had seen the Sir Lord's fire dragon, the serfs were still scared by the 2 metal dragons. They couldn't help but want to kneel down. The metal dragons in the sky didn't care about them. Alonso's eyes kept searching, and he determined that there were no traces of dragons on the Dodo Island. List is not here? Could it be that after seeing Prince Alex, he fled? According to the plan, Alex would first launch a surprise attack with the white iron dragon and the silver dragon, and when the battle was in full swing, he would appear. When List wanted to escape, Grand Duke Lure would join in the encirclement. He didn't expect that there would be an accident in the plan. At this moment, he suddenly received a wave of dragon magic. It was the magic wave emitted by the white iron dragon. The wave was reminding him of danger, and asking him to immediately converge in the direction of the white iron dragon. This was a simple way of long-distance communication between Dragon Knight. As long as they were within the range of the dragon's perception, they could communicate in this way. Huh! Alonso frowned. He couldn't understand why Alex would remind him of danger. Is there any danger in killing List? Even if he has an underage fire dragon, an ordinary light green gemstone dragon, and a newly promoted magic shooter, what can he do? His heart was still relaxed, but he didn't hesitate in his movements. He quickly drove the bronze dragon to fly in the direction of the white iron dragon, and the gray iron dragon followed closely behind. The flight didn't take long. He felt a new dragon's aura, although it was not the same as the fire dragon's aura he felt in the last dragon-slaying battle, and it was not the aura of the light green gemstone dragon. But he knew that this was the arrival of List. Come on! Alonso's spirit was lifted, and he quickly rushed over. The distance between them continued to shrink, but when the bronze dragon sensed that the other was in front of him, there was no trace of the dragon in his vision. Even when he flew down from the clouds, he still couldn't find the other. There was no fire dragon, and no light green gemstone dragon. Even when the bronze dragon kept reminding him that he was within a kilometer, there was still no trace of the other. What's going on? Why can't I see him? Alonso raised his eyebrows, vaguely understanding the meaning of danger from Alex. Then, he had a flash of inspiration. Is this an invisibility spell created by magic shooters? What a joke. I've already locked on to your position to the left. He shook the dragon's spear, and became one with the dragon. He faced the bronze dragon valiantly and charged at the position he sensed. The dragon's spear was wrapped in the power of wind and thunder, and it made an ear-piercing sonic boom. But just when he felt that he was about to hit the other, the bronze dragon suddenly felt the other's aura appear behind him. Before he could react and was ready to turn around to dodge the sneak attack, the silhouette of a transparent crystal-like dragon suddenly appeared and charged forward. The dragon's spear blossomed with a murderous aura, as if it wanted to stab the bronze dragon to death. Roar! Wee! Just when the two dragons were about to cross paths, an accident happened. A violent aura crashed over from the side, directly forcing the invisible dragon to turn around and give up this opportunity to severely injure the bronze dragon. Roar! A wild and insufferably arrogant dragon roar rolled between heaven and earth. It was the gray iron dragon that followed closely behind the bronze dragon. It raised its 60-meter-wide wingspan and fiercely pounced at the invisible dragon with the posture of a top predator. The airflow stirred up by the wings could be seen with the naked eye. Wisps of mist were emitted. Even the sunlight was covered. The invisible dragon with a wingspan of only 15 meters was several times smaller than the bronze dragon with a wingspan of 30 meters, not to mention the gray iron dragon with a wingspan of 60 meters. Bad luck. Riding on the back of the invisible dragon bard, Liszt secretly frowned under the strong pressure of the gray iron dragon. Without any sloppiness, he immediately chose to give up on killing the bronze dragon knight Alonso. Then, with a flash, he escaped into the material boundary and fled into the distance. Boom! The moment he entered the material boundary, the gray iron dragon's tail, like a real dragon spear, pierced the place where the invisible dragon disappeared, leaving only air. No matter how strong the attack was, it still missed. But Liszt, who was hiding in the material boundary, felt his scalp go slightly numb. He clearly felt that the tip of the gray iron dragon's tail was just a little short of piercing through the material boundary and stabbing him and the invisible dragon. That was a kind of violent attack that relied purely on physical strength to forcibly break the material space. The adult gray iron dragon was at its peak, and it probably had the strength to fight against an adult elemental dragon. The crystal white track was activated. Chapter 876. The Bronze Dragon Knight, Alonso Cassiopeia, escaped death. Not long after, they met up with Alex Petrichles. However, the original 5 dragons and 3 knight were now reduced to 5 dragons, 2 knight and a corpse. Prince Alex, how did things turn out like this? Alonso was still in shock. Is that Liszt? His mount is not a fire dragon or a light green gem dragon. It's an invisible dragon. Alex was expressionless, as if he was talking about an irrelevant matter. The Holy Dragon sequence has the power to represent space. Liszt is far more than the Fire Dragon Knight we expected, and he obtained the Light Green Gem Dragon. He has become an invisible Dragon Knight. Luer died under his assassination. Does the Holy Dragon really exist? Alonso frowned. I wasn't sure before. I haven't heard any news about the Holy Dragon for many years. When I was young, I traveled the noble Frost Empire and heard some news about the Holy Dragon. I thought that the Holy Dragon had become a thing of the past with the fall of the Moon Empire. I didn't expect it to be born again in the Azure Wave Sea. There is also a High Mage, which has not been born for many years. Prince Alex, things have gone beyond our expectations. Alonso took a deep breath and speculated seriously. I suspect that Liszt has mastered the ruins of the Moon Empire. Otherwise, the High Mage and the Invisible Dragon would not be born one after another. Alex glanced at the bronze-plated corpse of Luer and said indifferently, "This little bastard has grown up. I'm afraid it will be very difficult to kill him." Alonso's face darkened and then he raised his eyebrows. "Your Highness, do you want to give up this dragon-slaying battle? What do you think? Chase." Chase? Now that things have come to this, there is no turning back. If we can't kill List, there will be endless troubles in the future. We can only continue to chase and kill him to ensure that things do not get out of control. Otherwise, it will be the most serious crisis for our Eagle Kingdom. But List is an invisible dragon knight. He has the ability to travel through space. How can we kill him? Lure. Alonso seemed to have made up his mind. I will be the bait to lure him out. Doesn't he like to kill lone dragon knights? We will search separately, but keep in touch at all times. Once he appears, we will immediately entangle him and leave him no place to hide. Alex's eyes flickered for a moment. Do you think there's a possibility of success? In terms of combat power, he deserved to be the best in the Eagle Kingdom, but in terms of tactics and wisdom, he was slightly worse, so he had to rely on Alonso to give advice. After seeing what happened to Grand Duke Lure, to be honest, I don't have much confidence. This List will always have trump cards that I don't know about. For now, we can only fight it out. Killing him would be the best outcome. If we can't, we can only retreat first and think of a way to resolve the crisis in the future. Then let's kill them, Alex suddenly said. As an invincible white iron dragon knight, he naturally had his own pride. In the following period of time, Alonso took the initiative to leave, wandering alone in the waters around the island, searching for traces of the invisible dragon. Alex led the 4 dragons to search in another direction, but he maintained a connection with Alonso's magical aura. He held the dragon's spear in his hand. Alonso restrained his nervousness and coldly observed his surroundings. He earnestly hoped that List would show up and kill him. In this case, they could use the prepared all-out attack to pin down the invisible dragon and wait for Alex's support. Only in this way could they reverse the situation. Otherwise, if he lost the second dragon-slaying battle, he would be too ashamed to show his face. It was unknown how many times a dragon knight could participate in a dragon-slaying battle in his life, but he had participated in 2 dragon-slaying battles and failed both times. He would become the laughingstock and shame of the dragon knight. At this moment, he suddenly sensed the aura of the invisible dragon coming from afar. Overjoyed, he couldn't help but tighten his grip on the dragon's spear. However, his aura quickly disappeared without a trace. It turned out that List had just flown out of the material boundary and used his binoculars to scan his surroundings. After confirming the location of the bronze dragon, he left without looking back. Knowing that I killed Lure, he still took the initiative to divide his forces. Is this a temptation or a test of my IQ? List thought that he was not a person with a high IQ, but he was definitely not a representative of a low IQ. Alonso's move was clearly a mockery of him. He turned and left. In the following period of time, he would just take a walk with his dog. He had already asked Achi to inform Black Horse Island to properly transfer the elves. In fact, it didn't make much sense to transfer them. The Dragon Knight would not attack the low-level knight and civilians, let alone kill the elves. The game naturally had its rules. The Dragon Knight versus the Dragon Knight was the mainstream rule. Otherwise, your Dragon Knight would kill my people today, and my Dragon Knight would kill your people tomorrow. No one would get any benefits. Besides, compared with the Eagle Kingdom, the Flame territory was poor. Even if he was killed by the Dragon Knight, List's loss would be limited. At worst, he could go to the Eagle Kingdom to make up for it. Even if he could not make up for it, he could easily kill enough. As long as Alex and Alonso were not stupid, they would not choose to break the rules. He mainly wanted to prevent the other party from being flustered and exasperated and venting their anger on Black Horse Island. After all, they were all Dragon Knight. Who would dare to pursue the occasional brain cramp? He himself had disregarded his reputation and personally went to the battlefield to capture an ordinary knight, so he could not guarantee that the other party would not do such a thing. I hope you don't do this. Otherwise, my territory will be damaged, and the Eagle Kingdom will have to compensate 10 times, 100 times. Bart, who was riding the invisible dragon, constantly shuttled through the material boundary and flew in the direction of Alex. After sensing the dragon's breath, he was shocked to find that Alex was surrounded by 4 dragons, a white iron dragon, a gray iron dragon, a purple copper dragon, and a silver dragon. Obviously, he could not approach them casually. It's a pity that they are all precious metal dragons, but they don't belong to me. List sighed. Achi suddenly said, "Brother, aren't you going to wait for the Eagle Kingdom to retreat and then intercept the lone dragon knight?" List shook his head. "Having said that, I'm afraid the other party will not divide their troops after I killed Lure. Even if they divide their troops, it will be to tempt me. Even if they do divide their troops after they retreat, it will be difficult for me to track them. After all, there is no positioning method, and it is difficult to clearly see the position of each dragon. Achi may have a way." "Huh!" List was stunned for a moment and then overjoyed. "Achi, tell me, what is the way?" "It's a magic beacon that Achi just came up with. It uses space magic to leave a mark on the dragon. At this time, the location and distance can be determined through the resonance between the material boundary and the beacon, but the resonance distance should not be far, at most 100 kilometers. 100 kilometers, this distance has exceeded the sensing limit between dragons." List thought a little and knew that this was a good opportunity. "Achi, can you distinguish between different beacons of different dragons?" "I don't think so." "Then let's go back to Black Horse Island and experiment on Leo." List decided to do it, and without any hesitation, he moved directly at high speed, tore the material boundary, and entered the world outside. He found the natural node of the Bone Lake, returned to the territory, and flew out for a distance. After making sure that there was no one around to disturb him, he called out to Leo and asked Achi to place a beacon on Leo. This was a very small magic, and after it was released, if the invisible dragon was not sensitive to space magic, it would almost be undetectable. As for Leo, he did not know that he had been placed with a beacon. "Leo, fly forward and make sure that we are 100 kilometers apart." Roar! In this way, the invisible dragon Bard went south, and the little fire dragon Leo went north, constantly flying and pulling apart the distance. After 100 kilometers, Achi had lost the sense of the space magic beacon. But unexpectedly, the invisible dragon could still sense this space magic beacon. "Bard is so powerful," Achi said happily. "The farther the sensing distance, the higher the success rate of tracking." When Leo and Bard were 300 kilometers apart, the beacon finally disappeared from Bard's sensing. After flying back for a moment, he sensed it again. It's confirmed that the beacon limit is 300 kilometers, and the tracking plan can be carried out perfectly. List was in a good mood. The next step is to constantly tease Alex and Alonso, and then quietly place a beacon on each of their dragons. The plan was carried out perfectly according to List's ideas. He found Alonso, rushed out, and with a feint, escaped into the material boundary, then rushed out again, scared him, and escaped into the material boundary. After tossing around 3 or 4 times, he finally disguised Achi's success, placed the beacon on the bronze dragon, and then walked away without looking back. Next, he continued to target Alex and the 4 dragons, placing the beacons. It was a bit difficult, but it took some time and energy, and with the invisible dragon being scratched by Alex's attack, he finally succeeded in placing all the beacons. "Let's go." List smiled and did not stay any longer. Chapter 877. This chapter is titled, "Meeting You in the Deepest Part of My Life." It was already night. From the spatial magic beacon, it could be seen that all 5 dragons had returned to Hot Spring Island. He sent a message to the mages squatting on Hot Spring Island, telling the rats to keep a close eye on the food transportation on Hot Spring Island. List stopped tossing around and went straight back to Black Horse Island to rest. After a day of hard work on the sea, Bard was exhausted. He had to conserve his energy for tomorrow's event. Early the next morning, List continued to approach Hot Spring Island to monitor the 5 beacons. At the same time, he was constantly calling for smoke missions. Mission: your work and rest schedule is being spied on. The danger hiding in the shadows is approaching step by step. Even as a Dragon Knight, there is no guarantee that you will not be besieged. Fighting is the best solution. Please resolve the crisis in the shadows. Reward: Trace of the Ogre. The mission had not changed, and the crisis in the shadows had not yet been resolved. This meant that Alex and Alonso had not given up and wanted to attack again. Therefore, List could not relax and needed to continue monitoring the 5 dragons. However, when it was almost noon, the smoke mission changed. Mission completed. Reward: Trace of the Ogre. The mission was successfully completed. After some discussion, Alex, Alonso, Piero, and the others did not want to continue and chose to give up the dragon-slaying battle. But did you ask me if you gave up? List's eyes flickered. The smoke mission also seemed to move at will, slowly changing into another paragraph of serpentines. Mission: a dragon-slaying battle was resolved by your correct response, and you achieved the shocking result of killing the Dragon Knight. However, it is better to pursue a cornered enemy than to seek fame. Why not continue to work hard and achieve more brilliant results in this dragon-slaying battle? Reward: Cannibal trees. It is better to pursue a cornered enemy than to seek fame. This was his determination. When he noticed that the 5 dragons' beacons began to move, he quietly followed them. Along the way, these beacons did not disperse and continued to fly toward the interior of the Sapphire Islands. List kept a distance of 200 kilometers, not too far behind, waiting for the team to disperse. From afternoon to dusk, the 5 dragons finally stopped at a place and did not move. According to the map of the Sapphire Grand Duchy, and then using the sextant to determine their position, List quickly determined that they had landed on an inhabited island. It wasn't too big. It was the territory of a Viscount, Cube Island. The island lord was the Viscount of Cube Island. He followed the Marquis of Deep Throat Island, Wallace Pineapple Green. Is this a traitor, or has the 5-headed dragon not alerted the feudal lord of the island? List also found an island and quietly landed to rest. No matter what, the Viscount of Cube Island was highly suspicious of betrayal. Just as List was quietly tracking the dragon of the Eagle Kingdom. Far away on the blazing island, Emily was leading the giant elephants in orders of chivalry to start building the second road, Shwe River Avenue, a road that would connect Shwe Fire City and River Estuary City. The Whirlpool River was crooked and not straight. Therefore, the construction of Shwe River Avenue needed to go deep into the jungle. In the past few days, the road had been built into a dense jungle. However, many serfs transporting supplies went missing on the way. Gradually, a legend about the ogres broke out among the Moonslayer serfs. The first to mention the ogres were the serfs of the River Tribe. According to the serfs of the River Tribe, they used to be a large tribe 10 years ago. It was only because they encountered the ogres that they declined to a small tribe of less than 500 people. They had no choice but to migrate to another forest that had been conquered by the night. Unexpectedly, after hiding for 10 years, the ogres appeared again. The ancient magician of the River Tribe also proved that the serfs were right. Originally, the investigation of the ogres did not fall under Emily's management. However, when they set up camp, a knight went missing, which alerted her. After a few days of close investigation, she finally found the reason for the knight's disappearance. Is it this tree? Yes, Captain. We saw it tie up the serfs as bait, and then there were other tree monsters that dismembered the serf. Unfortunately, these tree monsters ran very fast, and we only kept this one. It seemed that when it saw that it couldn't run away, it directly became motionless like this. It was a slender tree, more than 3 meters tall, with not lush leaves, thin trunk and even thinner branches. Apart from that, there was not much special about it. However, the knight swore that the tree could move like a cane, pull out its roots, and run on the ground. "Burn it," Emily said. The torch ignited the branches and crackled, but the tree did not respond at all. It was like burning an ordinary, senseless tree. She watched the branches of the tree being burned. Her voice was childish, but her tone was mature. Interesting. Alex and Alonzo's Dragon Knight team set off from Cube Island, passed through 2 deserted islands, and finally left Sapphire Archipelago 3 days later. What followed was a voyage of more than 1,000 kilometers, but soon List found that there were some deserted islands in the sea that could be stopped. It was because of these deserted islands that the Eagle Kingdom could let the Dragon Knight set foot on Sapphire Archipelago at will. With spies like the Count of Hot Spring Island and the Viscount of Cube Island, they successfully launched a dragon-slaying battle with as many as 5 dragons. Unfortunately, the final result was still a failure. "They haven't dispersed yet?" List sat on a shell, next to a huge ice floe. Bard was lying on the ice floe, chewing on a few pieces of smoked grass in displeasure. "We Bard responded, indicating that he did not feel the beacon separate. Achi, on the other hand, swam happily in the sea. She used magic to retract her cloak, and then swam freely in the sea as before, only covering the important parts with water ribbons. List's eyes followed her figure, and there was a hint of a smile at the corner of his mouth. Then he took out a steaming cup of Banpo milk tea from his space ring and slowly tasted it. The pursuit on the sea was not hard for him. It was just a relaxing trip. After a moment, Bard stood up. He found that the beacon began to move, so List and Achi immediately set off and continued to track the beacon. After tracking for more than 100 kilometers, the eyes of the man and the dragon suddenly lit up. They felt that the 5 beacons that had been concentrated had finally dispersed, and 4 of them continued to stay the same. But another one had left the team. Who could have left? List directly gave up on the 4 concentrated beacons, rode the invisible dragon Bard, and chased after the beacon that had left the team. However, he did not rashly approach, in case it was a counterambush. In this way, they almost reached the coastline of the Eagle Kingdom. The other 4 beacons had long been lost, and the 4 dragons had probably returned to the Eagle Kingdom from another direction. At this moment, List was pleasantly surprised again, because he found that the dragon that had left the team happened to fly near the sea demon reefs, where there was a natural node that could allow List to directly travel through space. "So what are we waiting for, Bard? Let's go!" Flying at high speed, tearing the material boundary, entering the world outside the material world, and locking on to the natural node of the sea demon reef. Open. Back to the real world. The beacon's response was 20 kilometers away, and he had already sensed the dragon's aura. Grey Iron Dragon, so it's Duke Piero of the Grey Iron Duchy. Is it going straight back to its territory? Iron Dragon. If it were Alex White Iron, I might not dare to fight, but you're just a dragon without a knight. He drew out the Thunder's Fury Dragon Spear. Chapter 878. Roar. The Grey Iron Dragon let out a dignified roar, flapped its wings, and flew high into the sky. Standing on its back, the Grey Iron Duke, Piero Grey Iron, was somewhat puzzled. "Grey King, what's wrong?" Roar. The Grey Iron Dragon couldn't speak, nor could it communicate with Piero telepathically. It could only barely communicate through its body language and different tones of dragon roars. Fortunately, although Piero wasn't a dragon knight, he had been with the Grey Iron Dragon since childhood and understood what it meant. "You mean we are in danger? Is it the invisible dragon from before?" Piero quickly guessed the truth. Roar. The Grey Iron Dragon confirmed. Piero's complexion immediately sank. "The invisible dragon knight, List Flame, followed us all the way, and when it saw me flying alone, it wanted to kill me?" Roar. "Grey King, Can you contend against the invisible dragon knight? Roar. The gray iron dragon let out a domineering response, and then opened a few scales on its back, indicating for Piero to hide under the scales. Next, it had to face the battle alone. The sky-blotting wings constantly flapped, crossing layer after layer of clouds and climbing higher into the sky. It was afraid that the seawater raised by the high mage would trap it. A highly intelligent creature like a dragon naturally understood that the sky was its battlefield, and the higher it was, the more chances it had to win. When it climbed to an altitude of 20,000 meters, the air was already very thin. Although the gray iron dragon didn't feel any discomfort, it didn't continue to climb. Even with its dragon form, it was difficult to climb higher. Slowly hovering high in the sky, it closely perceived the invisible dragon's magic aura that was getting closer and clearer. Its body appeared strong and powerful, and its iron-gray scales reflected the sunlight, giving it a natural metallic coldness. Its tail was slender relative to its body, and it was constantly swinging behind it. The tip of its tail was slightly protruding, like a curved dragon spear, ready to attack at any time. However, what made the gray iron dragon uneasy was that it could clearly feel the invisible dragon's magic aura, but it couldn't lock onto its position. Sometimes left, sometimes right, sometimes front, sometimes back, sometimes up, sometimes down, making it feel that it wasn't facing a single dragon, but that there were countless dragons hiding in the surroundings. Of course, the gray-mouthed iron dragon knew that the other side was not only the invisible dragon knight, but also a fire dragon that could appear at any time, as well as a very powerful high mage. In order to avoid the high mage's attack, it had climbed to an altitude of 20,000 meters. Roar, roar, roar. As time ticked by, the invisible dragon still hadn't appeared. The gray-mouthed iron dragon was already restless. Even Duke Piero, who was hiding under its scales, felt extremely uncomfortable. The thin air here made it difficult for him to breathe. If this continued, he might become the first monarch to die from suffocation. But the invisible dragon did not appear. He just kept changing his position, provoking the gray-mouthed iron dragon's willpower. Occasionally, it would disappear for a moment, and when the Greymaw Iron Dragon wanted to retreat, the magical aura would slowly approach, and the invisible dragon would once again tease its surroundings. The whole process repeated over and over again for 2 hours. He couldn't help but beg the Grey Iron Dragon, "Grey King, I'm about to suffocate to death. Let's quickly retreat to the coastline." Roar. The gray-mouthed iron dragon was unwilling and ignored Piero. Thus, after another hour, when Piero fainted due to lack of oxygen, the gray-mouthed iron dragon was still in formation in the sky. But at this time, although Piero didn't continue to be noisy, its willpower had already reached the limit of endurance. Facing danger for a full 3 hours, its nerves were stretched taut, and its body didn't get any rest, so it could no longer maintain its state. Its state suddenly collapsed. Roar. With a violent dragon roar, the gray-mouthed iron dragon flapped its wings and flew toward the coastline without looking back. But just as it couldn't help but turn around to escape, the invisible dragon that had been secretly teasing it finally appeared. Liszt, who had long been ready, held Thunder's fury, poured all his berserk magic power and chi into the tip of the dragon's spear, and fiercely attacked with Snow Mountain. The gray-mouthed iron dragon's reaction could not be said to be slow, but after all, its state had collapsed once, and its tail was a bit slower. It brushed past the invisible dragon's body, and then it felt a stinging pain on its upper thigh. Thunder's Fury's berserk attack had already solidly hit it, breaking the incomparably hard steel-like scales. Scorching chi and cutting magic power frantically exploded, mincing several important muscles at the base of its thigh. Without waiting for the gray-mouthed iron dragon to turn around and counterattack, Liszt pulled out Thunder's Fury and had a chi throw out an ice shield to block it. He then rode the invisible dragon bard and escaped into the material boundary again. The gray-mouthed iron dragon turned around and bit. It spat out a torrent of metal dragon breath, which turned into countless blades and shattered the ice shield, but couldn't harm the invisible dragon in the slightest. The gray-mouthed iron dragon operated its magic power, solidifying the wound at the base of its thigh, and its scales stood up, arming itself into the image of a steel hedgehog. The iron dragon wouldn't be in a copper-plated state like the copper dragon. It could only erect its scales to form a hedgehog formation to protect its own safety. But this was doomed to be a futile attempt. The scales obstructed the passage of air, greatly reducing its flying speed. So the invisible dragon rushed out from time to time, thrusting its spear and escaping into the material boundary. Every time it thrusted its spear, the gray-mouthed iron dragon would inevitably burst into dragon blood. Roar, roar, roar! The gray-mouthed iron dragon was extremely annoyed. What made it even more afraid was that its state was getting weaker and weaker, so its desire to escape was getting more and more dominant. Sometimes it would take a critical hit from List's spear and fly forward with all its might. It felt as if it could reach land after flying for a while, and then it would be safe. However, List, who was chasing behind it, laughed proudly. Your mentality has collapsed. At this time and in this state, turning around and counterattacking can still cause serious damage to me. Apart from that, you can't escape. Compared to the invisible dragon, the gray-mouthed iron dragon was still a bit lacking. The dragon's spear danced, and its chi raged. List demonstrated and verified all of his ideas about the invisible dragon knight, Dragon Chi secret manual during the pursuit. Ghost erase, shadow lift, snow mountain collapse, sonic boom a stab, poison dragon a drill, as well as some new ideas that had just been formed and had yet to be polished, were all put to use. Wee-ya! Bard was equally excited. His body was slender, but he chased after the huge gray-mouthed iron dragon. This contrast in strength made him excited. He didn't even need to use the dragon's breath to shatter the sky. He directly used his claws to leave marks on the gray-mouthed iron dragon. Dragon's breath was closely related to the dragon's supreme magic. So, List's dragon spear and fighting technique, Bard's dragon claws and bite, and Achi's ice shield and water blade constantly caused damage to the gray-mouthed iron dragon. The whole process was even easier than killing the purple copper dragon knight lure in a hurry, because there was a very quiet output environment throughout. No dragon knight could come to support the gray-mouthed iron dragon in a short time. One chased and one fled. Blood spurted all the way. After chasing for dozens of kilometers in a flash, the gray-mouthed iron dragon finally saw the coastline of the Eagle Kingdom. It gathered all its strength, endured the pain all over its body, and wanted to return to land in one go. Roar, roar, roar! As long as it landed, there was hope for a comeback. But reality wouldn't let it get what it wanted. List appeared again, and the dragon's spear hit its body fiercely. Bard also spat out a reluctant dragon's breath to shatter the sky, constantly cutting its scales. Achi's vector cut and high-pressure water blade were released at the same time, once again breaking its broken scales. Then, what made the gray-mouthed iron dragon most desperate was that a ball of flame bloomed in front of it, turning into a fire dragon with a wingspan of nearly 30 meters and black and red scales all over its body. Under the fire dragon's ferocious dragon horns and twisted facial scales was a pair of infinitely evil scarlet eyes, as if looking straight at death. Without any extra movements, the fire dragon collided with the gray-mouthed iron dragon fiercely. For a moment, both dragons made the sound of bones breaking, both lost their balance, and fell into the sea. However, the fire dragon Leo had enough time to regain its balance, while the gray-mouthed iron dragon faced the storm-like attacks of List, Bard, and Achi. Kill him while he's down. This was List's consistent life motto. Usually, he liked to hide, but when it came to battle, he turned into an African brother flathead, indifferent to life and death. Moreover, how could he not seize the opportunity to beat a drowning dog? Chapter 879. There was no reversal in the situation. Another unknown dragon-slaying battle slowly came to an end. The seriously injured gray-mouthed iron dragon could no longer control its body. It swayed and slid towards the sea, its body covered with countless wounds. No one could provide it with supplies. Compared to Liszt, who constantly provided potions to the invisible dragon, its treatment was very miserable, and the result was also miserable. When it fell to the sea, the gray-mouthed iron dragon was completely unable to struggle and could only let a chi bind it with seawater, weakly gasping for breath. It really wasn't easy. Liszt conveniently threw a few potions into the mouth of the invisible dragon, and then had Bard grab the gray-mouthed iron dragon by its tail and drag it up. It flew towards several reef islands not far away. Thump! The huge body of the gray-mouthed iron dragon was thrown on the reef, lightly soaking in the seawater. The waterspout controlled by a chi was still entangling it, preventing it from suddenly attacking people. For creatures like dragons, they could not relax under any circumstances. The temporary weakness might be accumulating the next wave of strength. Roar! The little fire dragon Leo landed on another reef, full of vigor. He was very proud of his final fatal blow to the gray-mouthed iron dragon. Fire dragons were naturally belligerent, and one could imagine his mood after defeating the adult gray-mouthed iron dragon, which was larger than him. Wu-ya! The invisible dragon was the proudest one. The successive victories in the dragon-slaying battle were all due to its innate ability. However, it did not show off like Leo. It just quietly waited beside Liszt, watching Liszt jump onto the gray-mouthed iron dragon, plotting against this steel dragon. A chi smiled slightly, also happy to keep the gray-mouthed iron dragon. Sirens also liked dragons, and the more dragons around Liszt, the happier she would be. As for Liszt himself, he was walking along the steel scales towards the gray-mouthed iron dragon's dragon-tooth platform. Now that the gray-mouthed iron dragon had been completely defeated and bound, the next step was naturally to forcefully ride it. He would turn the gray-mouthed iron dragon into his fourth dragon, increasing the iron resources of the territory. The value of iron ore was not much lower than gold and silver. It was especially important to the country. Moreover, the battle strength of an adult iron dragon was also what Liszt urgently needed at present. Once he had an iron dragon, he would be able to face the dragon-slaying battle head-on, and wouldn't need to rely on the young invisible dragon and fire dragon to launch sneak attacks. Just as he reached the back of the gray-mouthed iron dragon, he suddenly discovered a few bulging scales. Through the gaps, he could see a person lying inside. He couldn't help but pry open the scales and see the person lying inside. He was dressed in gorgeous armor and didn't move at all. His face was green, his lips purple, and he was barely breathing. This person should be the Grayiron Duke, Piero Grayiron, right? Liszt pulled him up and checked his breathing. It was as if he saw a pile of dragon coins waving at him. If they didn't bring over a dragon elf, they wouldn't be able to redeem a duke. Grabbing the unconscious Duke Piero, Liszt locked him up with chi-restraining shackles and threw him at a chi's feet. A chi, look after him. This is a big shot who can be exchanged for a dragon elf. Dragon elf? Great. A chi cheered. She had wanted to study dragon elves for a long time. Piero was just an accident. Liszt continued to climb the gray-mouthed iron dragon's body and found the location of the dragon-tooth platform. However, the dragon-tooth platform was surrounded by steel scales. It was tightly sealed and couldn't be opened. Liszt couldn't help but walk up to the gray-mouthed iron dragon's head. He looked down at the gray-mouthed iron dragon's eyes that were filled with unwillingness. Gray-mouthed iron dragon, you should be able to understand my wind language. Open the dragon-tooth platform and become my dragon. Snort. The The gray-mouthed iron dragon snorted hot air from its nostrils and responded with a disdainful expression. "Do you want me to kill you?" List glared and shouted. He didn't expect the gray-mouthed iron dragon to still not yield even at this juncture. He was still disdainful. Roar. The gray-mouthed iron dragon let out a roar as if it was saying it wouldn't yield even if it died. List shouted and asked several times, but he couldn't change its attitude. It definitely wouldn't open the dragon tooth platform. In a fit of anger, he walked over to the dragon tooth platform and tried to forcefully cut off the scales and mount it. However, the scales on the dragon tooth platform were too hard. The Ice Soul Dragon slaying sword created a lot of sparks from the friction, but it still couldn't open a gap. After struggling for a while, the sky gradually darkened. There was still no way to open the scales on the dragon tooth platform. He had Bart and Leo come over and tear at the scales until they were bloody, but they still couldn't find the closed dragon tooth platform. The gray-mouthed iron dragon's eyes were filled with determination. It was a kind of silent, unyielding will to die. Moreover, it held a strong hostility, allowing the blood to flow and death to approach. Dragons were proud by nature. Very few would yield after being beaten. The gray-mouthed iron dragon was the same. List could see from its eyes that things couldn't be done. If he wanted to force himself on it, he would have to knock it out. However, the gray-mouthed iron dragon's willpower was astonishing. Even if he really rode it, it would be very difficult to defeat a dragon with a will to die. After a quarter of an hour of silence. Gray-mouthed iron dragon, I appreciate your tenacity, but do you think that I can't make you yield and become my dragon? He looked straight into the gray-mouthed iron dragon's cold eyes. I originally just wanted to save a little resources, but now I've decided to spend resources for you. Saying so, he took out a 7-colored fruit from his space ring. You are worth a bewildering dragon soul fruit. Leo Bart opened the gray-mouthed iron dragon's mouth. The invisible dragon glanced at List with a meaningful look in its eyes. It had seen List wrap the bewildering dragon soul fruit in roast beef and bring it to its mouth. Leo looked at the bewildering dragon soul fruit, feeling a sense of déjà vu. However, it didn't think too much about it. Under the condition that List promised to provide it with double the potion for 3 months, it excitedly used its dragon claws to forcibly open the gray-mouthed iron dragon's tightly clenched teeth with Bart. List raised his hand and the fruit fell. A bewildering dragon soul fruit fell down the gray-mouthed iron dragon's throat. Then, he commanded Bart and Leo to close the gray-mouthed iron dragon's mouth, so that it couldn't vomit out the bewildering dragon soul fruit. After waiting for a moment, the gray-mouthed iron dragon's eyelids started to become heavy, and then its eyes gradually became confused. This was a sign of dozing off. After another moment, the gray-mouthed iron dragon, which was full of vigor just a moment ago, directly closed its eyes and let out muffled snores. At the place where its neck and body were connected, a few bloody steel scales slowly unfolded, revealing the dragon tooth platform wrapped inside. The stars twinkled in the dark night. List's calm heart quickly became hot. He stepped into the deep bone gap of the dragon tooth platform and sat down. Boom! At that moment, the world changed. He entered the gray-mouthed iron dragon's mind world, a very strange place. It was similar to a blacksmith shop, but it used the volcano as the boiler and the mountain rock as the chopping board. A young iron dragon held a huge hammer and hammered the red-hot iron. Opposite the dragon was the figure of a tall knight, waving a small hammer to guide it. Clang! The small hammer hit the chopping board. Bang bang! The big hammer hit the red-hot iron. However, this scene didn't last long. With List's arrival, the young iron dragon fainted on the ground, and a rainbow-colored chain wrapped around it. The knight on the other side suddenly turned his head. This was a middle-aged man with regular features. At this moment, he was staring coldly at List. With a clang, he pulled out the knight longsword that he carried with him. However, just as he was about to attack, the rainbow-colored chain wrapped around his body, restricting all his subsequent movements. He could only watch as Liszt used a cloud of smoke to condense a fiery red dragon bone longsword and walked toward him unhurriedly. "The first-generation Dragon Knight's mind brand?" Liszt chuckled. Chapter 880. The corpse disappeared, and the figure of the first-generation Dragon Knight appeared in the blacksmith shop again, still entangled by the colorful chain. So Liszt continued to slash, constantly splitting the Iron Knight into too many times. Although a new first-generation Dragon Knight was born every time, the figure became fainter and fainter. After repeating this dozens of times, the figure of the first-generation Dragon Knight finally disappeared completely without a trace. At the same time, the spiritual world of the gray-mouthed Iron Dragon began to collapse. In the blink of an eye, the blacksmith shop, which used nature as an oven, was completely destroyed. Then, a new mountain rose from the ground, and the adult gray-mouthed Iron Dragon was entrenched on the top of the mountain, nodding to Liszt. The next moment, Liszt was in a trance. He was already riding on the gray-mouthed Iron Dragon. His broad wings stretched out, and his powerful hind legs stepped on the ground, leaping high from the mountain peak. He soared above the sky of the spiritual world, flying higher and higher, as if he was stepping on the sky under his feet. Suddenly, Liszt opened his eyes. It was still the dark night in front of him, and the gray-mouthed Iron Dragon was still sleeping soundly under his butt. But he already understood that there was a spiritual connection between him and the gray-mouthed Iron Dragon. The powerful effect of the mysterious dragon's soul fruit was vividly reflected in the spiritual battle. Even the unyielding metal dragon had to succumb to the power of the soul. So what is the power of the Emerald Dragon? What is the power of the soul? Is it a dream or a soul? Liszt noticed that a problem was troubling him. Legend has it that the Emerald Dragon represents the dream, but is the power of the dream the same as the power of the soul? Or if the Emerald Dragon wants to enter a dream, how does it enter the dream? Turn into a wisp of smoke, or build a new world? It was hard to figure it out. The Emerald Dragon's hind leg that was currently stored in the cellar of Firewood Castle had not been carefully studied, so he had no understanding of the Emerald Dragon's power. "Brother, did you succeed?" Achi came over and asked. "Well, remove the waterspout. The gray-mouthed Iron Dragon has become my dragon." Liszt smiled reservedly and summoned back Leo, who was a little unhappy with the gray-mouthed Iron Dragon. Liszt silently negotiated the conditions in his heart. Leo was still young and easy to fool. When Leo grew up, it would be troublesome if he wanted to ride a dragon as he pleased. Achi was extremely happy. She circled around the sleeping gray-mouthed Iron Dragon, sizing it up. During the day they were still fighting to the death, but at night they became a family. This feeling was a little weird. She then pointed to the nearby reef. "Big brother, that person has woken up." Piero Grayiron had already woken up. He was staring at the sleeping Grayiron Dragon with a complicated expression, as well as Liszt, who was holding his head high and chest out. There was resentment, hatred, sorrow, heartbreak, and so on. The moment before Liszt rode onto the Dragonfang platform, he had already woken up. Although the light was dim in the night, he could still vaguely see what was happening not far away. When Liszt stood up from the Dragontooth platform with a smile on his face, Piero felt a sharp pain in his heart. The Grayiron Duchy's 300-year-old heritage, the Grayiron Dragon, was lost. Thump thump! Liszt flew up and landed in front of Piero. A crystal lamp illuminated the surroundings, as well as Piero's pale face. "Your Highness Liszt, what did you do to my Grey King?" Piero put away his thousands of thoughts and pretended to be friendly, asking with a last shred of hope. But Liszt mercilessly shattered his hope. "Grey King, are you talking about the Grayiron Dragon?" "I'm very sorry, Duke Piero. From now on, the Grayiron Dragon belongs to me," Liszt flamed. It has nothing to do with the Grey-Iron Duchy and the Grey-Iron family anymore. I hope you understand this. No, no, no. Piero gritted his teeth. You can't snatch the Grey King away. The Eagle Kingdom won't sit idly by. You're openly challenging the kingdom's system. Duke Piero, don't say such nonsense. You have to understand your current status. I'm the winner of the dragon-slaying battle. Lure has already been killed, and you're very lucky to survive and become a captive. So next, you need to figure out what ransom you should use to redeem yourself. Captive? Piero stared blankly, only now realizing his status as a captive. But he still didn't give up. Okay, I'll pay the ransom, but you have to return the Grey-Iron Dragon. Your Highness List, you're a newly promoted Dragon Knight, so you might not know the rules of inheritance. Snatching dragons is a taboo among the kingdoms. List smiled, feeling that Piero still hadn't woken up. Will it be more serious than the dragon-slaying battle? Or in other words, the three kingdoms will gather the Dragon Knight together and launch a third dragon-slaying battle against me? Piero's eyes flickered, unwilling to give up. You did win the dragon-slaying battle, but your strong performance will break the balance of the kingdoms, especially your invisible dragon. Once it matures, I'm afraid all the Dragon Knight of the kingdoms will be uneasy. They won't let you continue to grow. Yes, the invisible dragon's deterrence is even stronger than the fire dragon's. List echoed, but then his expression turned serious. It's precisely because of this that I want to collect more dragons and strengthen my forces, so that no one will dare to have any ideas about me. In the era of the knight ruling the world, Duke Piero, you should know very well that only weakness is the original sin. Your idea is crazy. Wrong, it's very wise. List boasted, no longer arguing with Piero about this issue. He always believed in the saying, as long as I have a gun in my hand, I won't panic. The more dragons he had, the safer he would be, not the safer he would be if he lost his dragon. Duke Piero, cut the crap. You need to seriously consider how much ransom to pay. Under the starlight, the Grey-Iron Dragon was still sleeping. The power of the enchanting dragon fruit was very powerful, making this huge creature extremely weak and at the mercy of others. Fortunately, the enchanting dragon fruit was called the emerald fruit in ancient times, a product of the emerald dragon. If it could naturally grow an enchanting dragon fruit and then bear the enchanting dragon fruit, then all the Dragon Knight wouldn't be at ease. Who knew when their dragon would be snatched? Brother, is it called the Grey King? The Grey King is the name given by the Grey-Iron Duchy. It should have a new name when it comes to the Fire Kingdom. List pondered for a while. Let's call it Orn. Orn was a demigod of Freljord, in charge of forging and craftsmanship. He carved out a magnificent workshop in a karst cave under a volcano called Furnace Village, and worked in it alone. He fiddled with the boiling lava crucible, refined the ore, and created incomparably fine objects. This was the blacksmith in League of Legends, which was quite suitable for the strange world atmosphere of the Grey-Iron Dragon in the spiritual world. Orn. Achi muttered and felt that it was quite good. Chapter 881. Mission completed. Reward: Cannibal Trees. The smoke mission was undoubtedly completed perfectly, and the reward was immediately released. List did not know what a cannibal tree was for the time being and did not pay much attention to it. At this time, his mood was still immersed in the joy of the fourth dragon. The smoke mission instantly turned into a new serpentine. Mission: perfectly complete the second dragon-slaying war. Your name will shake the entire legendary continent. The sea will tremble when it hears your name. Now that the battle is over, the matter is not over. Why not punish the traitor in Sapphire by yourself? Reward: Elven Figure. Punishing the traitor, this mission is simple. Elven Figure, what is the reward? List thought about it, but he had no clue, so he decisively gave up. In many cases, the reward of the smoke mission was a supplement to the content of the mission. One could examine the mission itself through the clues of the reward. But most of the time, the reward had little to do with the mission. For example, there was no connection between this smoke mission and the reward, so there was no need to think about it. When the mission was completed, he would naturally know what the elven figure was. I'm going to sleep. I'll return directly to Black Horse Island tomorrow, and then bring a message to Sapphire Grand Duke. Although he did not participate in the dragon-slaying war, I don't believe that he will be unaware of the dragon-slaying war that took place inside Sapphire. It's not so easy to reap the benefits, and List's prediction was not wrong. In the Blue Sky Mountain Raising Palace, the Sapphire Grand Duke was listening to the Rat Leader's report about the situation on Hot Spring Island. The Eagle Kingdom's Dragon Knights have withdrawn, and the Count of Hot Spring Island has taken action to wipe out the traces on the island. However, our rats have discovered another wave of rats active on Hot Spring Island. Is it the rats under the Flame Marquee? It's very likely. They have been inquiring about the transportation of materials on Hot Spring Island from the beginning. Obviously, they know the news that the Dragon Knight of the Eagle Kingdom is stationed on Hot Spring Island. So this dragon-slaying war ended with the death of the Purple Copper Grand Duke? Sapphire Grand Duke sat in the main seat, his eyes deep. No one knew what he was thinking about. Prince Anthony sat next to him and wanted to say something, but he did not dare to interrupt the conversation between the Grand Duke and the Rat Leader. The Rat Chieftain replied, "We haven't managed to gather any deeper information yet. Everything in the Flame territory is operating normally. However, on the night of the dragon-slaying battle, the Flame Marquis returned to Thorn Castle to rest for the night. If this subordinate's deduction is correct, the Flame Marquis won the dragon-slaying battle." Fire Dragon, Light Emerald Dragon. How did he defeat the 3 Dragon Knights, Alex, Alonso, and Lure, as well as the 5 dragons? The Grand Duke muttered to himself, unable to understand. Anthony could not help but interrupt. "Father, do you believe this result? No matter how strong the Flame Marquis is, do you think he can contend against a 5-headed dragon? I can't see through it, and I can't figure it out either. However, I do know one thing. Since the Flame Territory's rats were active on the Hot Spring Island in advance, it means that List already knew about their situation. He could calmly prepare himself, whether he should hide or stand out. Lure's results also proved this point. But, no buts. The Grand Duke interrupted what Anthony was about to say. He coughed, and a deep exhaustion appeared on his aged face. The current situation is that Alex and the other Dragon Knight were forced to leave. They lost the dragon-slaying battle, or else the news would have spread. He paused to let his breathing become smoother. And we have to face the Flame Marquis List, who won the dragon-slaying battle. He is the future king of the Flame Kingdom. King of the Flame Kingdom? He really dares to give himself a title, Anthony said indignantly. To be able to win 2 dragon-slaying battles, he has the qualifications to become the new overlord of the sea and the new king of the Flame Kingdom. The sea is no longer peaceful, and it is time for the Sapphire family to make a choice. Anthony, this country will ultimately be handed over to your hand. What do you think we should choose? This. Anthony originally had a lot of things to say, but the words stuck in his throat. Why don't we destroy the Hot Spring Island first, stabilize the Flame Marquis, and then send someone to contact the Iron and Steel Ridge royal family? Once the Flame Kingdom is established, the Iron and Steel Ridge should not be able to sit still. Don't interfere with the Hot Spring Island. List has already noticed the Hot Spring Island. Leave it to him to deal with it personally and also test his thoughts. We are in an awkward position, Anthony. External forces will never last. All we can rely on is the Sapphire Dragon. Moreover, Sapphire Grand Duke felt a little bitter in his heart. He had signed an offensive and defensive alliance with List, but he watched the fire from the other side. This young dragon knight was not someone who could be easily dismissed. After returning to Black Horse Island, Liszt arranged for Duke Piero. The other party was a sky knight at the perfect level, and his strength was not weak. Therefore, although he could enjoy good treatment, the necessary shackles still had to be put on him. As for the gray iron dragon Orn, he was not brought to Black Horse Island. Instead, he was temporarily placed on the Heart Island to recuperate. Orn had already woken up. He was still a little conflicted about the fact that he was being ridden and remained silent. However, he accepted the potion that Liszt gave him and acquiesced to his relationship with Liszt. No matter how the battle of the soul was won, as long as the victory was won, the proud character of the dragon would not deny the dragon knight. Subsequently, without stopping, Liszt went to Coral Island Tulip Castle and saw the Marquis of Oxdale. "Father, there is something I need to give you to deal with." "What is it?" "The day before yesterday, there was a dragon-slaying battle on the Northern Sea." Liszt simply explained the battle, without deliberately exaggerating the situation, and without using a ups and downs tone. But when the Purple Copper Dragon Knight Lure Purple Copper died, the Grey Iron Duke was captured, and the Grey Iron Dragon Orn became Liszt's mount. Such news was casually said, and the Marquis of Oxdale was still shocked and speechless for a long time. Until Liszt quietly drank a cup of tea. He tried to digest the news and restore his father's dignity. "You said that 5 dragons besieged you, but you killed a dragon knight and captured one of the iron dragons. In the blink of an eye, 2 vassal states of the Eagle Kingdom faced the risk of collapse, while you were unscathed. As you can see, I am now very healthy. This is too sudden, Liszt. If I hadn't seen you standing here, I would have doubted whether you were my son or not. Although I consider myself talented, I never thought that my son could have such a glorious achievement. You are far more legendary than what is described in the night novels. In the night novels, the protagonists would at most ride a dragon and have a carefree ending. Liszt, on the other hand, was constantly riding dragons at the rate of 2 dragons a year. Perhaps the sea needs a king to stand up, and I happen to be the choice." He spoke with rare humility. "Father, the stance of the Sapphire family in this dragon-slaying battle leaves me bitterly disappointed. As allies who watch and help each other, they sit by and watch the invasion of the Eagle Kingdom, which seriously infringes on my interests. What do you want to do?" "To be honest, I haven't thought about it, but if I can't vent this anger, I will feel very uncomfortable. You know that I already have 4 dragons, and I don't mind adding another one. You have to give me a bottom line so that I can talk to the Grand Duke about this matter. The resources needed to support 4 dragons are massive, and the Grand Duchy of Sapphire must pay a part of it. But the most important thing is the attitude. The Fire Kingdom is about to be established, and I still lack a vassal state." "You want Sapphire to be your vassal state?" Lee William was surprised. Chapter 882. Captain Marcus, gather all the orders of chivalry on the island and follow me to Hot Spring Island. Liszt pointed with his sword, and Black Horse Island suddenly boiled. "As you wish, Your Highness." Marcus was inexplicably excited. He was now a baron. 4 years ago, he was just a civilian without a title, following a lord with no future and going to the declining and dilapidated Flower Town. He never thought that one day, he would walk on familiar ground as a baron. Looking at Liszt's shadow in the sun, his heart was filled with infinite loyalty and reverence, because he understood that all this was given by the young lord in front of him. Compared with 4 years ago, the young lord had already shed his childishness and become an indomitable dragon knight. Now the young lord had won the second battle of the dragon, and was now going to clean up the traitors and spread the inviolable glory of the dragon knight. Marcus quickly conveyed Liszt's decree, summoned the various knight squads, and issued a war mobilization. He was not strong, just an elite Earth Knight, but he had a high position of power. Everyone knew that he was List's spokesperson and in charge of the most elite flower orders of chivalry. It was not only the Knight of the Flower Orders of Chivalry who was gathering, but all the Earth Knight who stayed on Black Horse Island were gathering in the direction of the dock. In fact, List alone could eradicate the Count of Hot Spring Island, but he still did all the Knight in the territory. Whether old or weak, as long as it was an Earth Knight, they were mobilized, looking for weapons and equipment, and boarding fast sailboat. The dock could already produce fast two-masted sailboats, but the three-masted fast sailboats had not yet been fully mastered. "Your Highness, will the patrols also be dispatched?" Paris came to ask, riding a black blood horse. As a light magic swordsman at the same level as the Sky Knight and the Great Magician, her strength has grown rapidly in recent years, and she can already fight against a sword saint without falling behind. She was an early confidant of List. Currently, she only had the title of Baron, which made List somewhat dissatisfied. Although this plump and beautiful female follower was not very smart, she was very much appreciated and trusted by him. He hoped that he could promote her to a high position as soon as possible to keep the captive faction in check. The captive faction was a thought in List's mind. It referred to the Sky Knight's followers who were captured from the Eagle Kingdom. There were many of them, and they were very strong. It was easy for them to form clique. Sift through the patrol group. All the Earth Knights will go to battle. Paris, not only your patrol group, but Charles's security group also needs to send the Earth Knight. Going to the Hot Spring Island is the best reward I can give to the old people who have followed me. Your Highness, you are a lord who cherishes old friendships. You deserve the loyalty of every knight, Paris said respectfully. There was still a hint of uncontrollable love in her eyes. No woman would not be tempted by the Dragon Knight, not to mention that the Dragon Knight was so handsome and tall. If the Grand Duchy of Sapphire published something like the sexiest male knight in the eyes of the women in the country, List would definitely be elected with full vote. The glory belongs to me. I am with you. List reached out and patted Paris on the shoulder. Seeing this light magic great swordsman, he thought of the light dragon that lived in the Maple Mountain of the Grand Duchy of Maple Leaf. It was a huge dragon with a length of 80 meters. It was powerful and unpredictable. No Dragon Knight dared to strangle this dragon and achieve the title of Dragon Slayer Hero. List was in the mood to join in the fun. But the time was not right yet. It was not the right time to go out and mess around. But then again, he was currently a Dragon Knight who achieved a double kill. The light green gem Dragon Knight, Carl Low Violet, and the purple copper Dragon Knight, Lloyd Purple Copper, all died in his hands. This record was considered glorious among the Dragon Knight. After all, most Dragon Knights died of old age. It was rare to die in battle. Your Highness, Charles reports to you. The security group has gathered all the Earth Knight. They are ready to fight at any time. Charles Trapp rushed over quickly. His enthusiasm for battle achievements was far greater than Paris's. Paris was a woman and a bit lazy. Moreover, her strength was already comparable to a sword saint. Sooner or later, she would become a high-ranking noble. Charles, the elite Earth Knight, was different. He had to seize every opportunity to achieve battle achievements. Commander Paris, Commander Charles, since the orders of chivalry have been gathered, you will board the ship immediately and listen to Commander Marcus's command. Yes, Your Highness. For a time, 5 orders of chivalry were gathered on Black Horse Island, the orders of chivalry led by Marcus, the orders of chivalry formed by Sky Knight Derek Iron and Joyce Dandelion respectively, and the alternative orders of chivalry formed by Paris and Charles. Only one Sky Knight, Spec, was left in the territory to be responsible for security. The 5 orders of chivalry boarded the ship and set off in the direction of Hot Spring Island. On the other side, Tulip Castle also gathered a large number of knights and rushed to Cube Island to clear the Cube Island Viscount. However, Marquis Oxdale did not personally participate. He had set off for Blue Dragon Island, ready to negotiate with Sapphire Grand Duke about matters related to the second dragon-slaying war. Behind him stood his son riding a four-headed dragon. Ignoring the shocks, he had never felt so good. Hot Spring Island. The Count was rubbing a batch of treasures in the cellar. These were all sent by the Eagle Kingdom. He risked his life to become a trader, so naturally, he needed to get a high reward. It's really beautiful. This Crystal Helen statue is definitely made by the top crystal craftsman in the Eagle Kingdom. It's so beautiful that it's like it's alive. Ah, great Crystal Helen, you once guided the Moon Empire forward. Now, are you willing to guide this lost knight to your heart? He closed his eyes, as if intoxicated in a psychedelic love. There was an extremely beautiful woman, hugging and kissing him, clatter. Woo 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 woo. An emergency horn suddenly sounded over the castle, interrupting the Count of Hot Spring Island from his fantasy. Just as he was about to burst into anger, he suddenly remembered that this horn was a warning sound that would only be sounded when the territory was being invaded. What's going on? He hurriedly wrapped the half-man-tall Crystal Helen statue in soft cloth, then rushed out of the cellar angrily and shouted at the knight who was hurriedly lining up outside. "My lord, it's the Flame Territory's orders of chivalry." A knight captain rushed over on horseback and hurriedly replied, "The Flame Territory's orders of chivalry have invaded our Hot Spring Island. They have already conquered the seaside city of Sand City and are now rushing towards the Hot Spring Castle. My lord, please get ready for battle." Flame Territory? The Count's heart skipped a beat, then contracted violently. It was April, but he felt like he had fallen into a 9-story ice cellar. He felt a bone-chilling coldness. Flame Territory. List Flame. Dragon-slaying battle. Has it happened? Before he could figure out the situation, in the distance, the knight who was lining up to face the enemy suddenly exclaimed, "Dragon! It's a dragon! Fire Dragon! The Fire Dragon of the Marquis of the Flame Territory! Why is the Flame Territory attacking our Hot Spring Island? Isn't he afraid of the Grand Duke's punishment? It's over, it's over. The Dragon Knight is attacking personally." In the midst of the exclamations, the figure of a fire dragon appeared in the sky. Its 30-meter-wide wingspan gently flapped, wrapped in boundless flames, and spread towards the Hot Spring Castle. There was no breathing, no impact, just the flames set off by its wings, aimed at the Hot Spring Castle and burned. The horses neighed, and all the knight in the line fled with their heads in their hands. The Hot Spring Castle's orders of chivalry did not resist and completely dissipated. The fire dragon swept over the castle. Liszt, who was riding on the dragon's back, glanced at the tall castle, his eyes very indifferent. Behind him, the 5 orders of chivalry of Black Horse Island assembled to charge. The torrent of chi instantly submerged the Hot Spring Castle. In one corner of the battlefield, Paris, Derek Iron Armor, and Joyce Dandelion flew up and rushed towards the Count of Hot Spring Island, who was preparing to escape, and blasted him back. Everything. Chapter 883. The traitor must die, but before the trial, the Earl of Hot Spring was not killed, but was arrested. Then he began to summon his territory to orders of chivalry. Punishing the traitor was just a gimmick. What Liszt really needed were the resources of Hot Spring Island, material resources and human resources. The betrayal of the Earl of Hot Spring Island gave him an excuse to rob resources openly. At this moment, standing in the cellar, looking at the dazzling treasures, Liszt asked the Earl of Hot Spring, whose hands and feet were tied, with great interest. "The Eagle Kingdom is really willing to spend so much. So many treasures are given to you. I often go to the Tulip family's cellar, but it's not even 1/10 of the treasures you have here. Tell me, when did they instigate you to become a spy in Sapphire?" "Your Highness, I am willing to dedicate all my wealth to you, and my family and I are also willing to follow you for life," the Earl of Hot Springs said hurriedly, "and then continue to be a spy." "How can that be, Your Highness? I am really willing to change. I will turn over a new leaf and follow you forever." This kind of nonsense was really meaningless, but the Earl of Hot Spring had to say it, even if there was only a slight chance of being forgiven. However, List did not care about any of his statements. It was too degrading to bargain with a dead man, not to mention that he was a real dragon knight. "When did you become a spy in the Kingdom of Eagle?" 10 years ago, my son was captured by the Kingdom of Eagle when he participated in the Expansion War. Since then, I have been His Highness Alonso's spy. "But Your Highness, I did not do anything to betray the Grand Duchy of Sapphire. Your father, Marquis Oxdale, and I are old friends. Receiving the Dragon Knight of the Kingdom of Eagle and launching a dragon-slaying war against me, is this also called no betrayal?" "Ah, this. I didn't know why they came here. I just thought they were looking for something." The Earl of Hot Springs' forehead was sweating. He knew that the lie was full of loopholes, but he still had to brace himself and continue. "What is this?" List suddenly noticed the crystal statue that was half a man's height. The crystal statue seemed to be a pink crystal, which was probably a byproduct of pink rubies. However, this statue was very complete. Its entire body was transparent and without any flaws. It was obvious that it was of very high-quality associated ore. The carved figure was that of a magician, wearing a tight-fitting magic robe. Although the crystal was pink and transparent, the facial features and figure of the statue could be said to be perfect. Even though List was used to a delicate siren like Achi, he couldn't help but be amazed by the sorcerer in the statue. She was sexy, beautiful, and dignified. In particular, the transparency of the crystal combined with the angle of the sculpture made it seem as if the person in the sculpture was a living person, looking at him with a faint smile. Opening magic eyes, he could see that every line on the statue's clothes was a magic line, and there were traces of magic arrays. This was a magic equipment. "It's Crystal Helen." The Count of Hot Springs sounded lost and confused, but he soon came back to himself. "Your Highness, this is the most precious treasure in my collection. It was made by a top crystal master, who worked with a sorcerer to build it into a treasure that combines beauty and magic." Crystal Helen? List seemed to have heard this name before. The Count of Hot Spring was still enthusiastically introducing. "It is not only beautiful, but also has a special effect. When it is placed in the castle, it will comb the wandering magic of the castle, making people feel relaxed and happy. Ordinary people bathed in her aura will be free from diseases and disasters, and knight and sorcerers can enjoy the convenience of cultivation." He paused. The Count of Hot Springs seemed to be giving up his beloved woman. "I am willing to offer it to Your Highness. Only Your Highness is qualified to enjoy such a treasure." "Who is Crystal Helen?" List suddenly asked. "Well, she is a legendary empress of the Moon Empire, the supreme leader of the sorcerers. Her beauty makes the moon lose its color, and even dragons are awed by her beauty and are willing to be driven by her." "I remember now." List nodded. He had read a magic book that mentioned the Empress of the Moon Empire. Although the Moon Empire was a world ruled by sorcerers, it was also an imperial system and a slave system. One of the empresses was called Helen Truth, and she loved crystals very much. Because of her beauty, the magicians who fell in love with her had built a crystal palace for her. Pillars, roofs, arches, steps, including thrones, tables, chairs, clothes, carriages, cutlery, and even toilets, were all made of crystal. It was ridiculous. However, the legend of the Moon Empire was already very vague. No one knew if the Crystal Palace really existed. Even the existence of Crystal Helen was doubtful. The statue in front of him was a very good decoration. Of course, Liszt would accept it and move it back to his castle to add to the artistic atmosphere of the castle. "Pack it all up and take it away." He waved his hand and gave the order. As for the Count of Hot Spring, after he introduced the origin and function of the collection, he could be taken to the execution ground and prepared to be hanged. Usually, a noble knight could buy his freedom with a ransom, but it was not suitable for traitors. Back then, the Sapphire Grand Duke had set off a round of bloody purges on the Iron Hoof Island. Liszt killed a count and lord with the same ease. In front of the square of the Hot Spring Castle, many of the incorporated knight came to watch. A Black Horse Island official read the Count's crimes in front of the gallows. "The Count of Hot Spring Island is despicable, killed a knight, abused civilians, colluded with the Kingdom of Eagle, assassinated a Grand Duchy Marquis, and conspired against the Flame territory. His crimes are heinous and unforgivable. He shall be hanged immediately." After the crimes were read, the Count of Hot Spring Island was hanged alive in front of all the knights' hearts. Some of his servants and confidants were also hanged on the gallows for various crimes. It was not known if there was hell or some other place where the dead went, where they could continue to follow the Count of Hot Spring Island. Liszt stood on the balcony of the Hot Spring Castle. He wanted to see the hanging clearly. Marcus was at his side, reporting the materials harvested from the Hot Spring Castle. The Count of Hot Spring Island was an old count, and he also colluded with the Kingdom of Eagle. His wealth was astonishing. There were a lot of gems, jade, gold coins, and other resources. There were also a lot of sprites, 1 great sprite, 16 lesser sprites, and 136 sprite worms. They were all contracted to his son. However, they would soon be handed over to Liszt one by one. The knight and serfs on the island also began to count them one after another. When the time comes, those who should immigrate to Flame Island will directly immigrate there. The remaining assets that cannot be taken away can be bought back by the Sapphire family. The harvest is really rich. This kind of thing makes money quickly. Liszt thought happily. Compared to the gray-mouthed iron dragon harvested in the dragon-slaying war, these resources were nothing. But after all, there was only one iron dragon, and the resources of the Hot Spring Island were dazzling and varied, giving people more stimulation. Chapter 884. 1 corn sprite, a cereal sprite, was of high value. There were 5 corn sprites, 2 barley sprites, and 1 wheat sprite. They were all grains and were very valuable. 1 jasmine sprite, 1 half lotus sprite, and 1 magic ingredient sprite were of high value. 1 tomato sprite, 1 apple sprite were of good value, were of good value, were of good value. 1 black tea sprite, as a common source of tea fruits used by aristocrats, was of good value. 1 mangosteen sprite, 1 brocade sprite, and 1 stone sprite were of ordinary value, were of ornamental value. There were also 136 sprite worms, 10 of which were of high value, of which 10 were of the magic ingredient sprite. In short, the resources plundered from the Hot Spring Island were huge, which could be said to be enough for Liszt to eat until he was fat. These were all resources that could be put to use at this time. Let's call this sprite Tick, Doombringer Fedtick. In League of Legends, Fedtick was a scarecrow. When Liszt saw that the farmland around the Hot Spring Castle was full of corn and many scarecrows, he gave the corn great sprite a new name. The only regret was that the corn great sprite Tick was already 150 years old. Based on the lifespan of a great sprite of 200 years, it could live for another 50 years. Moreover, its character was a bit stiff. The Count of the Hot Spring Island treated the sprites as tools, so the sprites were very dull. They were not lively enough. But now, after becoming Liszt sprites, they would enjoy a better life, a happy and comfortable living environment. The Count of the Hot Spring Island had 4 Viscount followers. Originally, Liszt planned to take advantage of the situation to wipe them out, but the 4 Viscounts reacted too quickly. Without waiting for the Flame Lord's orders of chivalry to attack, they all knelt in front of List. Using the excuse of ignorance, they begged List's forgiveness and took advantage of the situation to pledge allegiance to the new lord. One after another, they declared that they were willing to migrate Flame Island and develop a new island for the Flame family. Seeing their former lord being hanged to death, they couldn't bring themselves to take revenge at all. After all, the enemy they were facing was the Dragon Knight. As for the Earl of Hot Spring Island and the Kingdom of Eagle, it was hard for them to not know, and they had no intention of being loyal to the Earl of Hot Spring Island. The knight prided himself on his loyalty, but under the premise that he could buy himself back with a ransom, how much loyalty could he have? Interests were the only value that the nobles pursued tirelessly. Anyway, at the top of the city wall there was a huge royal flag. But apart from the fall of the former owner of the Hot Spring Island, there were not many changes. After the knights were incorporated, they were still stationed on the Hot Spring Island, and the serfs still had to farm. Of course, immigration would still be implemented, but it would have to wait until the magic transmission array was opened. Currently, they did not have the ability to transport manpower and resources from Hot Spring Island to Flame Island. Furthermore, the spring plowing had already passed, and they could not delay the growth of the crops. After the Hot Spring Castle was cleaned, it became List's palace. The elves were still kept here, but there were special servants and night guards here. List stayed here for 2 days, and then he got up and left. He had to deliver new food to Fire City. Although a batch of potatoes had just been harvested, the population had soared to 300,000 due to the absorption of the moon killers throughout the winter. Orders of chivalry were busy collecting food in the forest, but they still could not sustain the growing food consumption. While List was happily plundering the spoils of war, Prince Alex, who lost the Battle of the Dragon Slaying, took Alonso and the dragons and directly returned to the capital of the Kingdom of Eagle. It was not clear what happened to the Grey Iron Dragon and Duke Piero. The news of the return of the Dragon Knight was not leaked, and only some people in the palace knew. The king summoned Prince Alex and Marquis Alonso in the palace. When the body of the Purple Copper Dragon Knight Lure Purple Copper was carried into the hall, the king raised his eyebrows directly, and a bad feeling arose in his heart. Subsequently, he heard the whole story of the dragon-slaying battle from Alex. So, Grand Duke Lure died in battle, and the dragon-slaying battle that cost a lot of national power failed again? The King of Eagle had a thick beard that covered his expression, and his eyes did not have much color, as if he was asking about an insignificant matter. But Alex and Alonso, who were familiar with the king, knew that the other side was angry to the extreme. Alonso directly knelt on one knee. "Your Majesty, Alonso is incompetent and delayed the kingdom's war. I am willing to accept your Majesty's punishment." As a prince, Alex did not need to kneel. He just cupped his fists and said, "Your Majesty, I am not shirking my responsibility, but the reason for the failure of this dragon-slaying battle is more because of the appearance of the invisible dragon. No one could have thought that List had an invisible dragon as a mount." Invisible dragon! The King of Eagle slammed the scepter in his hand on the floor. "Which one of you can tell me why the holy dragon was born in the aquamarine sea, and why it fell into the hands of List?" At this time, the excuse of the knight's glory and the like obviously could not fool him. Alonso said in a deep voice, "If I am not wrong, List has already mastered the ruins of the ancient Moon Empire era. The legend of the Holy Dragon was active in the Moon Empire era, and it has not appeared for many years. The birth of high mages is definitely related to the ruins of the Moon Empire. The shrinking of the weave was not unfamiliar news to the Dragon Knight. And the promotion of a new high mage did not mean that the weave was restored, so Alonso believed that a cheese promotion was achieved by relying on the ruins of the Moon Empire era. This guess could not be wrong. It was indeed through the tears of the mermaid that a chi came into contact with the weave and laid the foundation for her promotion. and the Temple of Fish Clown was more or less related to the Moon Empire. It was also not wrong to say that it was the ruins of the Moon Empire era. It was just that they all ignored List's personal reasons. All his strength came from his personal struggle. After all, the smoke mission was part of his body, and the power of fate had long been integrated with him. But strictly speaking, the death of the smoke dragon and the survival of the power of fate seemed to be related to the ancient Moon Empire. Alonso's guess was not wrong in the general direction. The Moon Empire, an ancient empire that has been decaying for who knows how many years. Alonso, do you think this reason can convince me? The Eagle King's tone turned cold. For this dragon-slaying war, the kingdom has spent a lot of resources and used many connections. Now tell me, how much the kingdom has suffered from the failure of the dragon-slaying war. Your Majesty, please punish me. Will punishing you help things? At this moment, the Eagle King still did not know that there was a problem with the Grey Iron Dragon. The Purple Copper Grand Duchy has always been the western barrier of the kingdom. Grand Duke Lure was my strong supporter, but he is dead. How can I explain this to my aunt and cousin? The Eagle King's cousin was Lure's wife, the Grand Duchess. Prince Alex sighed. This matter was not timely enough. Your Majesty, please allow me to personally escort the body of Grand Duke Lure back to the Purple Copper Grand Duchy. No matter what the Purple Copper family requests, I will do my best to satisfy them. The Eagle King looked at Alex and did not speak. After a long time, he sighed faintly. Alonso, get up. Tomorrow, return to the border and continue to guard. As for Grand Duke Lure's sacrifice, I will personally contact my aunt. Now I need you to immediately come up with a response. I want to know how to stop List's growth. He paused. Chapter 885. The dragon-slaying battle on Dodo Island did not happen in public, so the nobles of Sapphire Isles did not know about this great war. However, the Knights of the Fire Territory did not hide the fact that they had publicly destroyed the Hot Spring Island. After the merchants on the island and the rats in the dark spread the news, it spread to the ears of all the nobles in the Sapphire Archipelago within a week. What's going on? Why did the Marquis of the Flame destroy Hot Spring Island? Even the Dragon Knight can't be so reckless. Is the Grand Duke not doing anything? The Count of Hot Spring Island is an upright and sincere man. The Marquis of the Flame is indeed powerful, but he can't bully the weak like this. This is trampling on the dignity of a knight. Many nobles and lords did not dare to comment on this matter in public, but after socializing, they would inevitably use the excuse of being drunk to criticize the Flame Territory for bullying the weak. There were even nobles and lords who spoke directly to the Sapphire Grand Duke, hoping that the Grand Duke would step in and stop this matter. However, just as the news of the Flame Territory destroying Hot Spring Island spread, merchants and rats quickly brought new explosive news. The Oxdale Marquis orders of chivalry to destroy Cube Island within a day. The attack was carried out openly, without any concealment, and without the permission of the Marquis of Deep Throat Island. The Viscount of Cube Island was the follower of the Marquis of Deep Throat Island, Wallace Pineapple Green. Destroying him naturally required Wallace's permission, or else it would be considered a provocation. On the other side, the Dragon Knight List publicly destroyed the follower of another Dragon Knight. On the other side, the Marquis of Oxdale publicly destroyed the follower of another Marquis. This caused the public opinion of Sapphire Isles to boil. What are the Marquis of Oxdale and the Marquis of the Flame trying to do? I've dealt with Lee William before. He's a loyal and upright knight. Why would he do such a thing? If Marquis Wallace offended the Marquis of Oxdale and attacked the Viscount of Cube Island as a punishment, it would make sense. But the Marquis of the Flame destroying the Count of Hot Spring Island, what does this mean? Could it be that the Tulip family wants to turn against the Grand Duke? The Grand Duke can't sit idly by, or else the Tulip family will rely on the Dragon Knight and the High Mage to overthrow Sapphire's rule. We must advise the Grand Duke. However, before these discussions had even begun, Ma Huiying's orders of chivalry's night had already passed on the Sapphire Grand Duke's edict to all the major island lords. A jaw-dropping piece of news exploded. The Master of the Azure Waves Sea, the Lord of the Sapphire Islands, the Great Sapphire Grand Duke, hereby announces to all his followers and knight that the Count of Hot Spring Island and the Viscount of Cube Island have colluded with the Eagle Kingdom and provided assistance to the invasion of the Eagle Kingdom's 5 dragons and 3 knight. They have assassinated the Marquis of the Flame and started the dragon-slaying war. The Marquis of the Flame put up a strong resistance. He ended up killing the Purple Copper Dragon Knight Lure Purple Copper, and repelled the Eagle Kingdom's evil plan. He also quickly destroyed the 2 traitors, the Count of Hot Spring Island and the Viscount of Cube Island. The Marquis of the Flame and the Marquis of Oxdale pursue loyalty, justice, courage, and fearlessness. This is an excellent display of the noble qualities of a knight. At the same time, the detailed news released by the merchants of the Flame Territory, the Oxdale Territory, and the Rat quickly spread. Every dragon-slaying war was the best headline news of the year. There was no need to expend any effort to publicize it. It would naturally cause an explosion. The White Iron Dragon Knight Alex White Iron, the Bronze Dragon Knight Alonso Cyclamen, the Purple Copper Dragon Knight Lure Purple Copper, the Grey Iron Dragon, the Silver Dragon, and the 5 dragons and 3 knight joined forces to besiege the Marquis of the Flame. However, the Great Fire Dragon Knight, the Formless Dragon Knight, and the Light Green Gemstone Dragon Knight list of the Flame killed Lure and defeated the 5 dragons. Unbelievable! Unbelievable! The dragon-slaying war on Dodo Island involved 8 dragons. His Highness List occupied 3 dragons and defeated the 5 dragons and the knight. His strength is boundless. The Formless Dragon is a holy dragon, the legendary Holy Dragon. He's too powerful. The knight is blessed by glory. His Highness the Marquis of the Flame is not a son of glory. He is glory itself. How terrifying! The Count of Hot Spring Island and the Viscount of Square Island colluded with the Eagle Kingdom. The traitors must die. The Marquis of the Flame destroyed them in a righteous war. Marquis Wallace personally thanked Marquis Oxdale, thanking him for destroying the Viscount of Square Island, the traitor. Who can tell me if this is true? Why is His Highness List recognized by the 3 dragons? Is he the embodiment of the knight's glory? In an instant, the nobles and feudal lords who originally had opinions about List destroying the Count of Hot Spring Island changed their opinions one after another. They wanted to praise List 24 hours a day. They were afraid that their previous complaints would reach List's ears. If List was just a dragon knight, he would have a magic shooter as his helper. They could still rely on the Sapphire Grand Duke to back up some of their verbal accusations. These accusations were to protect the interests of the aristocratic class, and they also hoped that the Grand Duke would treat them favorably. But the news that had arrived was too terrifying. List had actually ridden on 3 dragons alone, killed a dragon knight, and defeated 3 dragon knight and 5 dragons of the Eagle Kingdom by himself. Coupled with the gorgeous fighting style of the magic shooter, such a tyrannical, cool, and heaven-defying configuration. It could be said that even if the Sapphire family was destroyed, no one would dare say a word. Although the world ruled by the knight system had a relatively strict order and rules, when one's strength reached a certain level, so what if one broke the rules? The Master of the Sea has changed. Marquis Wallace Pineapple stood at the bow of the ship, his heart feeling weak and haggard. As early as when the Tulip family had swept through Cube Island, he had personally led orders of chivalry to deal with them and questioned the leader, Levis. What is the meaning of the Tulip family? What is your father's meaning? Killing my followers for no reason. Levis, who rarely participated in wars, mainly came to get military achievement. But he had become a Sky Knight after all, and he had cultivated a calm demeanor. He calmly replied, "Marquis Wallace, my orders are from His Highness List, the Dragon Knight. There might be some news that you don't know, but His Highness List has killed another Dragon Knight." He only spoke briefly about the dragon-slaying battle. Then, Wallace's expression fluctuated between green and white, turning into a faint sigh. He did not say anything more before turning around and leaving, no longer concerned about the survival of Cube Island. That night, Wallace took a ship to Blue Dragon Island. When he arrived at Blue Dragon Island, he saw Sapphire Grand Duke and Oxdale Marquis drinking tea in the Blue Sky Mountain Palace. Accompanying them were Duchess Sarete Grandflower Wheelon, eldest Prince Anthony, Marquis Glendonton Maple Leaf of Maple City, and Marquis Nesta Grandflower Wheelon of Quicksand City. It could be said that all the higher-ups of the Sapphire family were drinking tea with Lee William. Such a high standard was simply inconceivable. When he saw this scene, Wallace already understood that the Sapphire family no longer had the final say in the sea. After staying in the Blue Sky Mountain Palace for a night and receiving an edict personally written by the Grand Duke, Wallace left Blue Dragon Island with flagging interest and returned to his territory. He felt that he was getting old, and it was time to retire and enjoy his old age, no longer participating in the struggle for power among the nobles. The former Marquis of Red Crab Island, Merlin Longtaro, had been the companion of Sapphire Grand Duke since he was young. How could Wallace Pineapple not be loyal since he was young? The Master of the Sea has changed. Looking at the title at the beginning of the edict, Wallace once again sighed with emotion in his heart. In the past, the Sapphire Grand Duke's official letters all began with the title Master of the Sea, Lord of all Islands, the Great Sapphire Grand Duke. But now, the edict was Master of the Aquamarine Wave Sea, Lord of the Sapphire Archipelago, the Great Sapphire Grand Duke. From the sea to the Aquamarine Wave Sea, from all islands to the Sapphire Archipelago. The meaning was self-evident. Chapter 886. The land area was too large, and it was inconvenient to transmit information. The news that Piero Greysteel had been captured and that the Greysteel Dragon had become List's mount had not yet spread. In fact, the result of the dragon-slaying battle had just been brewed among the higher-ups of the Grand Duchy of Sapphire and the Eagle Kingdom. Of course, the rats of the major kingdoms and duchies had already brought the news back home. It would not be long before the northeastern corner of the entire legendary continent would be completely boiling. Some people felt uneasy, some listened to the story, some worshipped madly, and some were inexplicably jealous. These were all normal operations. However, List was destined to add firewood. The reason was simple. He himself was quite low-key, but after completing the mission to punish the traitor, he issued a rather high-profile new mission. The Grand Duchy of Sapphire has begun to praise your name, and the higher-ups of the Eagle Kingdom are also conspiring to curb your growth. But a real man is not afraid of the dirty business in the dark. It's time to ride the Greysteel Dragon and visit the Blue Dragon Island, and let the Sapphire family make the right choice. Reward: the first vassal country to surrender. Obviously, the Sapphire Grand Duke was still hesitating. This was also a matter of course. List's previous generations had been followers of the Sapphire family. But one day, their identities were reversed, and the Sapphire family was to become followers of List. From the perspective of interests, List, who had a multi-headed dragon and a magic shooter, already had the qualifications to be a king. It was logical for a duchy to surrender to a kingdom, and they were all countries on the sea. But from the emotional aspect, it was extremely difficult. Another point was that the Sapphire family still had expectations for the Iron and Steel Ridge royal family. They hoped to be able to strike a balance between the Iron and Steel Ridge Kingdom and the future Fire Kingdom. They were not willing to casually change side. The Sapphire Grand Duke's idea is not excessive, although he belongs to the treacherous side in terms of offensive and defensive alliance. He is, after all, the lord that the Tulip family has followed for generations. Being too harsh and forcing the family's reputation is not good. It was reasonable. The relationship between the Sapphire family and the Tulip family was good. The Tulip family had never betrayed them, and the Sapphire family had never treated them harshly. This friendship had to be taken into account. Otherwise, List's reputation would be terrible after his rise. Reputation was just icing on the cake most of the time. However, as a noble family, and a top-notch dragon-rearing family at that, they still had to rely on the knight system to maintain their rule. They still needed to add to their reputation. Then I'll ride on the gray-mouthed Iron Dragon Orn and go to Blue Dragon Island to deal with the situation. Let the Sapphire Grand Duke judge the situation himself. He looked at the smoke mission and decided. After the delivery of the food, they traveled through space and arrived at the Heart Island. The gray-mouthed Iron Dragon Aoun, who was recuperating from his injuries, had almost recovered. He did not suffer from the heavy injuries that the light green gemstone dragon had suffered previously. Instead, he only suffered some external injuries. Hence, with the strong recovery ability of a dragon, he recovered very quickly. However, it would take some time to replenish the depleted Supreme Dragon Demon. Normal riding and fighting were no longer a problem. Roar! Aoun did not have a good impression of List. After all, he had forced himself on List to complete the soul battle. However, after erasing the first-generation Dragon Knight's soul brand, Aoun still accepted List as his Dragon Knight. Bard, carry a chi. I'll ride Aoun. List arranged the mounts quickly. Woo! Bard did not reject a cheese ride. Of course, the Dragon Tooth platform was List's exclusive seat. No matter how much Bard liked a chi, he would not allow a chi to sit on it. Just like how the gray-mouthed Iron Dragon protected Piero, he did not have the right to sit on the Dragon Tooth platform. As such, a human and a dragon rode towards Blue Dragon Island. On List's chest was the little fire dragon Leo, who was in the form of magic power. Since he was going to Blue Dragon Island to show his authority, he might as well expose his trump card. If the light green gemstone dragon was not still on Flame Island, he would have brought 4 dragons with him. The general trend was already set. He did not care if he was exposed to the eyes of the various kingdoms on the legendary continent. The invisible dragon's combat power was not very outstanding, but its ability to travel through space was too strong. It was enough to ensure that he could escape from any dangerous situation. The smoke mission mentioned that the Eagle Kingdom was thinking about how to contain List's conspiracy. When the other kingdoms on the continent learned of the rise of List and the existence of a holy dragon like the Invisible Dragon, they would inevitably outline their conspiracies. But these conspiracies were nothing more than the dragon-slaying war and economic sanctions. No one could deal with the Invisible Dragon in the dragon-slaying war, and economic sanctions were even less effective. If List could not do business, he could go and rob. Robbing the hot spring island made him fat. If he went to the mainland kingdoms to rob a few marquises, wouldn't he become a big fat pig? He could even go and rob the Dragon Knight. A lone Dragon Knight was no match for him at all. With the luxurious lineup of himself, Bard, Leo, and a chi, it was too easy to kill a lone Dragon Knight. If it was not for the fear of forcing the mainland kingdoms too far and making them reach an agreement to send out all the Dragon Knight to capture him, List would have developed this tactic long ago. Besides, I still have the smoke mission warning. He had a clear understanding of the situation on the continent. In the case of the Eagle Kingdom's 2 defeats in the dragon-slaying war, the other kingdoms would probably try to win him over. Maybe one of the kings would want to marry his daughter over. Of course, He didn't have too many thoughts about marrying the princess of a kingdom. What he wanted most now was not the surrender of the Grand Duchy of Sapphire, but the reward of the previous smoke mission. Mission completed. Reward: a cannibal tree dragon elf. This was the smoke serpentine prompt for the completion of the traitor punishment mission. When List transported food to Fire City, he went directly to Emily, who was repairing the road, and asked about his cannibal tree dragon elf. He had heard the magic platform's message report before. Emily was leading people to investigate the ogre incident, which was the reward of the previous smoke mission, traces of the ogre. Finally, they found the true culprit of the ogre, which was the reward of the previous smoke mission, cannibal trees. Finally, the third round of the mission about the ogre, which was the reward of the previous mission, cannibal tree dragon elf. Dragon elf. A dragon elf. Although this reward was much worse than the dragon reward, it was a shocking reward for List. He had an extraordinary desire for elves. He had long been looking forward to getting a dragon elf. After all, if a dragon-raising family didn't have a dragon elf, it would be too shameful. He originally thought that there wouldn't be any dragon elves in the wild. After all, the requirements for elves to evolve were too harsh. Great elves had to live with dragons for a long time to evolve into dragon elves. Dragons were extremely rare, and the ones that ended up in the wild were mostly evil dragons. How could they tolerate great elves approaching them? Therefore, he couldn't count on wild dragon elves, and snatching them wasn't realistic either. He could only nurture them himself. Phoenix Parasol Tree Great Elf Infant, who liked to touch small fire dragons, was the first dragon elf he was looking forward to. After a long time, Infant was still touching it and hadn't evolved. In the end, a chain mission that he didn't pay much attention to because of the dragon-slaying war suddenly rewarded him with a dragon elf, which made him pleasantly surprised. Unfortunately, Emily and the others had been tracking the cannibal tree for a long time, but they hadn't found the dragon elf. According to Emily's conjecture, the cannibal tree could burrow into the ground. This dragon elf might be hiding underground. After List personally searched the forest 3 to 4 times to no avail, he ordered Emily to continue searching. Even if they had to dig 3 feet into the ground, they had to find this dragon elf. What should come couldn't run away. Chapter 887. After searching upstream for a month in the dense forest, the night team led by Yevich finally found a place where humans lived. It was a small village with no knight, no elf, and no one planted crops. The men in the village lived by hunting, while the women collected wild fruits in the nearby mountains and raised a clumsy bird that looked like a chicken but was bigger and had brighter feathers. Confrontation and communication. Although they didn't speak the same language, they managed to communicate some information by making gestures. The villagers here did not know which country they were from, nor could they write. They only knew that they belonged to the bearded lord, and every year they had to submit a large amount of fur and fritillary to the bearded lord. The fritillary was a colorful big chicken whose meat was very delicate and smooth. After paying a few colorful shells, some hunters took Yevich and the others to the town where the bearded lord lived. In the dilapidated castle near the town, Yevich met the bearded lord. After some threatening gestures, the bearded lord, who was almost an earth knight, told Yevich his identity. He was the follower of a viscount of a marquis in the Snow-Wind Duchy. He was not from the Eagle Kingdom, but a duchy that Yevich had never heard of. Snow-Wind Duchy? Yevich drew a new question on a piece of paper he carried with him. Which kingdom does this duchy belong to? The bearded lord was amazed by the white paper in Yevich's hand. He took the paper and drew an abstract and complicated family emblem on it, and then wrote some strange words on it. He tried to translate the meaning of the words. It probably referred to a big plain with yellow stones. Yellowstone Plain Kingdom? Yevich suddenly realized. He had heard of this kingdom. It was in the southwest of the Eagle Kingdom and could be said to be a neighboring country. However, the Yellowstone Plain Kingdom and the Eagle Kingdom were separated by a plateau covered by ice and snow all year round, and a large number of World of Warcraft lived there. The environment was extremely bad, so the two kingdoms rarely had contact. Between the two kingdoms, there were several duchies that had trade contacts with the Eagle Kingdom. However, Yevich had never heard of the Snow Wind Duchy. The south of the Eagle Kingdom was undeveloped and the environment was bad, so he didn't know there was a duchy here. He continued to communicate with Lord Stubble, but Lord Stubble was just a lord knight who had never traveled far, so his knowledge was limited. He didn't know where he was, but he knew that his Viscount lived further west, and it would take a day's ride to get there. And when he followed his Viscount Lord to help his superior Count Lord participate in the war, he had to ride for 5 days and cross several mountains. The further west one went, the colder the climate became, but the more fertile the land became. Further west was the territory of the Marquis, and further west was the true hinterland of the Snowstorm Mountain Duchy. That's a little awkward. Sailing west from the third archipelago, apart from discovering a large island, they directly reached the mainland's coastline. His Highness asked me to find out the distribution of power here, but within a few hundred kilometers of the coastline, there are no signs of human habitation. How are we going to start a war in the future? He was referring to Sapphire's model. Sapphire had developed by robbing the Eagle Kingdom. In the future, the Fire Kingdom would definitely walk the path of robbery. But now they discovered that the coastline of the continent was completely undeveloped. If one were to venture deeper into the interior, they would still be in the highlands. The cold climate there was completely different from that of the Fire Kingdom. It would be very difficult to rob the Snowstorm Mountain Duchy. I'd better contact His Highness first and ask for his next instructions. He occupied the bearded lord's castle and gestured to the mages who followed him to send a message. Just as Yevich snuck into the legendary continent and investigated the power information of the surrounding countries, List had already set off from the Heart Island and quickly entered the Blue Dragon Island. He flew in the direction of the capital, the Blue Dragon City. He flew at a high altitude without alerting the humans on the ground. When he entered the Blue Dragon City and sensed the Sapphire Dragon resting in the dragon nest in the valley, he gestured to the gray-mouthed Iron Dragon Orn to lower his flying altitude. He gestured to the invisible dragon bard to reveal himself and summoned the little fire dragon Leo, forming a 3-headed dragon formation. When they flew close to the ground, they just happened to fly over the Blue Dragon City. When the grayish-white gray-mouthed Iron Dragon, the red-black Fire Dragon, and the transparent crystal-colored Invisible Dragon appeared in the sky above the city, the largest sapphire city with a population of 200,000 fell into a frenzy. Dragon! 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 What is this? It's a dragon! There are 3 dragons! Glory of the night, what am I seeing? Is this the invasion of the Dragon Knight? It's too terrifying. 3 dragons. Are these dragons here to destroy the Blue Dragon City? The civilians were terrified by the appearance of the dragons. Many of them even hugged their heads and lay on the ground, not daring to look at the dragons above their heads. Many women carried their children and hid in their homes, afraid that the evil dragons would come to loot the city. Of course, there were also bold civilians who shouted at the 3 dragons, unable to suppress their excitement. Even the residents of the Blue Dragon City might not have seen the Sapphire Dragon before, let alone 3 unfamiliar dragons. The nobles in the city immediately thought of the edict of the Sapphire Grand Duke and quickly recognized the fire dragon that had shown great power in the dragon-slaying battle near the Iron Hoof Island. It's the fire dragon! His Highness List has come to the Blue Sky Mountain Palace in person. Glory of the night, what am I seeing? This is the dragon of the Marquis of the Flames. The one in the middle is a fire dragon, the one over there is a holy invisible dragon, and the one over there is a light green, Wait, isn't that a light green sapphire dragon? Is that an iron dragon? Since when did His Highness List have an iron dragon? Great Dragon Knight! A knight worshipped him crazily. The stories about List circulating in the market made every knight feel incredible and envious. Listening to such stories was more satisfying than reading the best knight novels. Why did the Marquis of the Flames come to the Blue Dragon Island? Could it be? A knight immediately thought of a conspiracy and became worried. Gosh, is His Highness List on the Three Dragons? Gosh, is he looking at me from the sky? Gosh, if I can ride the same dragon as His Highness List, I'll do anything. Many noble ladies were so excited that they blushed as they looked at the dragons in the sky. The three dragons simply flew past the Blue Dragon City and headed for the Blue Sky Mountain Palace at the peak of the mountains in the distance. However, the commotion left in the Blue Dragon City was still lingering. The nobles spread the news and guessed the meaning of List's arrival. The commoners prayed secretly and proudly told the stories of the Dragon Knight that they had heard. The ladies either gathered together to talk about List or hid in their boudoirs to think about love. It was as if a stone had been thrown into a lake, setting off ripples that spread outwards. The blue blood orders of chivalry stationed outside the city had quickly assembled and were waiting for the Sapphire Grand Duke's summons. As the orders of chivalry under the direct command of the Sapphire family, they were bound together for good or bad. No matter how serious the situation was, they had to devote their loyalty. However, this was destined to be a false alarm. When the Sapphire Dragon took off to receive them, List had already landed on the open space in the square in front of the Blue Sky Mountain Palace with the three dragons. He jumped off the back of the gray-mouthed iron dragon and caught Achi, who had jumped off the back of the invisible dragon. They walked unhurriedly towards the huge and noble palace that seemed to be the focal point of the sky and the mountains. The knight guarding the palace had already been reminded. They quickly arranged themselves into a guard of honor and came before the three dragons while trembling with fear, clustered around List and Achi. Chapter 888. Your Highness List, Your Excellency Achilles Ides, welcome to the Blue Sky Mountain Palace. Sapphire Grand Duke looked at the tall and high-spirited List, his calm gaze containing a faint sense of loss that could not be concealed. The nameless pawn that could only crawl in front of him in the past. Now, he had become a dragon knight on equal footing. No, to be precise, he had become a high and mighty new overlord. He already had to bow slightly when they met. In particular, when he looked at the ash-gray iron dragon, his heart twitched fiercely. This was clearly the iron-gray-iron dragon of the Duchy of Grey-Iron. In the last dragon-slaying battle, he had killed Carl Violet and snatched the light-green gemstone dragon. In this dragon-slaying battle, he had killed Lloyd Zetong and snatched the iron-gray-iron dragon. Sapphire Grand Duke could not imagine how this smiling young man in front of him, who had just turned 20, could do all this. But the iron-gray-iron dragon was entrenched in the palace square, so he had to believe it. It's not 3 dragons as I said before, but 4 dragons. Such a luxurious lineup, I'm afraid they have come with ill intentions. This time, the Sapphire family probably has no choice. Sapphire Grand Duke felt bitter in his heart, his body constantly feeling weak. Fortunately, Grand Duchess Serene, who was holding his arm, secretly supported him. She did not show it. Grand Duke, I came uninvited, I hope I did not disturb you. List was not arrogant, and still greeted him in a gentlemanly manner. His action was the etiquette of a knight greeting an equal, giving face to Sapphire Grand Duke. Then he looked at the ox-tailed Marquis and bowed. Father. This made the recently complacent William even more complacent, unable to conceal his smile. List, why didn't the light green gemstone dragon come, but the iron-gray-iron dragon? He did not know that the iron-gray-iron dragon had already been ridden by List. After all, this was the first time this dragon had been exposed. I captured Duke Piero. The iron dragon and I are compatible, and it has become my dragon." It was as if he was responding to Liszt. The gray-mouthed iron dragon let out a drawn-out roar and glanced indifferently at the Sapphire Grand Duke's party, as well as the sapphire dragon that was entrenched on the hill not far away. His Highness Liszt is indeed the most outstanding youth of this era. He is simply the embodiment of a knight's glory. Sensing the weakness of the Grand Duke, Lady Serene extended an invitation on her behalf. "Your journey has been long and dusty. Your Highness Liszt and His Excellency Achilles, why don't you enter the palace for tea and rest?" Achi didn't like this kind of social scene. She didn't say a word. She just leaned against Liszt and let her mind wander. Liszt readily agreed. "Okay." Thus, everyone returned to the Blue Sky Mountain Raising Palace. Rather than calling the Blue Sky Mountain Palace a palace, it would be better to say that it was a combination of a large group of castles. They were spread out on a mountain in the middle of the mountains, connecting from the top to the foot of the mountain. Its grandeur was far beyond the few castles on earth. Moreover, it had magical creations. A floating garden could be seen hovering on top of one of the castles. That was the bedroom of the Sapphire Grand Duke. Standing in the corridor of the castle, one could see the Blue Dragon City in the distance and a huge blue lake. That was the largest lake on the Blue Dragon Island, the Tranquil Lake. The pearl ornaments popular throughout the Grand Duchy were collected from the low-level world of Warcraft, pearl oysters cultivated in the lake. However, the black pearl products of Black Horse Island were now renowned throughout the country. Compared with the white pearls produced by pearl oysters, black pearls were larger, rarer, and more expensive. Liszt kept the top-grade black pearls in his hands to make the wind pearl and did not sell them to the public. There were also pink pearls and golden pearls that were not sold to the public. The breeding industry of black giant clams, pink conches, and golden lip oysters had never been able to expand, and the output was not enough to supply himself. Perhaps after a few years or a decade, the development of the sea area of Flame Island could develop these three kinds of shell farming, but there was no possibility of it growing for the time being. In the luxuriously decorated hall of the palace, Liszt and Sapphire Grand Duke sat at both ends of the huge round table, surrounded by the Marquis of Oxdale, the eldest prince, the Marquis of Quicksand City, the Marquis of Red Maple City, and of course, Achi, who was holding a magic book without looking up. "Your Highness Liszt, I welcome your arrival. If you are not an official guest, can I take it as a private exchange between the Sapphire family and the Flame family?" The Sapphire Grand Duke had recovered his body. The brief weakness just now was just caused by emotional fluctuations. Liszt could not deny, "Of course, this is a private exchange. It's just about the situation of the Dragon Slayer War. I think you need to know more about it, Grand Duke, so I came over." Sapphire Grand Duke nodded and said, "So, what else do I need to know?" Neither of them had any intention of exchanging pleasantries. Liszt pondered for a moment. "The situation of the dragon-slaying war is under my control. Whether it is the Eagle Kingdom, the Iron and Steel Ridge Kingdom, or the Blast Furnace Kingdom, no matter how many times they start a dragon-slaying war, it is ridiculous behavior for me. I need the Sapphire family to understand that the sea should be ruled by the knight sailing on the sea." Sapphire Grand Duke also muttered for a moment, "I apologize for the invasion of the Eagle Kingdom. Next time, there will never be a mainland dragon knight passing through the Sapphire Archipelago unscrupulously. That is a must." Liszt's attitude was clear. Whether it is the Tulip family or the Flame family, they were once followers of the Sapphire family. Now the situation has changed, but I hope that the two families can still have close cooperation and not be obstructed by outsiders. So, how should we clarify the position of the Sapphire family? Sapphire Grand Duke asked seriously. Liszt asked in reply, "Grand Duke, how do you think we should clarify?" The hall fell into a short period of silence. In the end, it was Sapphire Grand Duke who broke the silence with a slightly bitter laugh. Invisible dragon, fire dragon, gray iron dragon, light green sapphire dragon, Your Highness List, Your Excellency Achilles. Facing the current situation, I am afraid I do not have much room for choice. This is not my intention. Liszt spread his hands, indicating that he did not want to do anything to oppress others. But a stable order of the sea is the prerequisite for the establishment and development of the Flame Kingdom. I am not afraid of the Dragon Slayer War. In fact, if I can get a dragon in every Dragon Slayer War, I am looking forward to it. It was a very cold joke, he continued, but if I can develop steadily, I am more willing to patiently build my home. The Flame Islands are far away from the mainland and have a large area. It is worth many years of cultivation, rather than relying on war to seize resources. I like peace very much. After saying that, he laughed. Chapter 889. Although the joyous atmosphere was slightly stiff, it did not hinder the improvement of the previous stiff situation. Then, after Oxdale Marquis told a few jokes, the atmosphere became more cordial and friendly. Finally, after several mediation, a new alliance agreement was signed. This agreement stipulated that the Grand Duchy of Sapphire must fully fund the establishment of the Fire Kingdom. Once the Fire Kingdom was established, the Grand Duchy of Sapphire would officially declare itself a vassal state of the Fire Kingdom and pay tribute to the Fire Kingdom. At the same time, the Fire Kingdom and Liszt's Flame family must ensure the safety of the Grand Duchy of Sapphire. The Azure Waves Sea would be divided to the Sapphire family, and the power of the Fire Kingdom would not extend here after the establishment of the Fire Kingdom. However, Black Horse Island and Coral Island could be regarded as the concessions of the Fire Kingdom in the Grand Duchy of Sapphire, and the territory would always belong to Liszt. After signing the agreement, the Grand Duke was somewhat depressed. It was not because he followed Liszt, but because the concession of Coral Island and Black Horse Island in the agreement was a slightly humiliating performance of ceding territory for peace. Liszt, had to rent these two islands. In the study, he talked to Sapphire Grand Duke alone. Grand Duke Andrew, I did not deliberately humiliate the Sapphire family about the concessions of Coral Island and Black Horse Island. In fact, these two islands are of great use to me, so I might as well disclose some information to you in advance. Your Highness, please speak. Now that the agreement had been signed, Sapphire Grand Duke no longer entangled with the title. In private, he directly called Liszt Your Highness, which was the title of a follower. Otherwise, Your Highness should be preceded by the name Liszt, or the title Flame Marquis, or the title Dragon Knight. After the establishment of the Fire Kingdom, Your Highness would be changed to Your Majesty. The Fire Archipelago is nearly 7,000 kilometers away from the Sapphire Archipelago. How do you think I can travel quickly between the two archipelago and migrate a large number of night and serfs to develop it? Does this have anything to do with the invisible dragon? Sapphire Grand Duke was uncertain. Yes and no. Liszt did not beat around the bush. The ancient legendary magic transmission array really exists. I have discovered an ancient magic transmission array that connects to the Flame Archipelago, and I have studied it thoroughly with a chi. We can build a new magic transmission array. The Sapphire Grand Duke exclaimed, Teleportation magic array. That's right. I didn't expect the ancient legends to be true. There really is such a great magic as the teleportation magic array. Speaking of which, I'm afraid only Sir Achilles can study the teleportation magic array. No wonder you want to build a teleportation magic array on Coral Island and Black Horse Island? I intend to establish a magic teleportation array on Black Horse Island to connect the Flame Islands and the Sapphire Islands. Once the magic teleportation array is successfully established, I can shelter the Sapphire Islands at any time. You will no longer have to worry about the revenge of the Iron and Steel Ridge Kingdom and the covetous eyes of the Eagle Kingdom. Now that I know the nature of the matter, I am completely relieved. The Sapphire Grand Duke poured 2 glasses of wine and handed one to List. Your Royal Highness, I will do my best to help establish the Flame Kingdom according to the agreement. I hope the friendship between the Sapphire family and the Flame family will last forever. List smiled. 4 friendship cheers. At this point, all the purposes of riding the gray-mouthed Iron Dragon to Blue Dragon Island had been successfully achieved. For the next day, accompanied by the Grand Duke and his wife, List strolled around the Blue Sky Mountain Palace and thought about the palace he would build in the future, how to build it and lay out it. It would definitely be several times larger, more gorgeous, and more magical than the Blue Sky Mountain Palace. The most special thing about the Blue Sky Mountain Palace was the Sky Garden, which was a building made of magic. He had a chi, a magic shooter, and the increasingly large Guild of Magic as his backing. He could toss out even more incredible buildings, so much so that he even wanted to build a floating castle. The castle on the ground was no longer worthy of his current identity, status, and strength. The luncheon was grand and sumptuous. All the nobles above the Count who were stationed on Blue Dragon Island were invited to accompany them. The main character of the banquet was not List. Both he and Achi liked peace and quiet. The real main character was the Marquis of Oxdale, who chatted cheerfully with the Sapphire Grand Duke and toasted with the Marquis, Earl, and Lord. After 3 rounds of wine, he was full of himself and felt that the pinnacle of life was nothing more than this. Of course, he understood that this was List deliberately putting on airs. That was why the nobles mainly attacked him. After all, List was too aloof. A light sip was considered a response to Earl and Lord's toast. This Dragon Knight, who was not keen on socializing at banquets, was a little distracted and thinking about the smoke mission. The moment the agreement was reached was the moment the character was completed. Mission completed. Reward: Grand Duchy of Sapphire. Then, a new smoke mission appeared. Mission: Due to the delay of the dragon-slaying war, the construction of the teleportation circle in the Heart Island Reed Marsh has not started. Now that the war has subsided, why not take the opportunity to build the teleportation circle and provide great assistance in developing the Flame Islands? Reward: Dragon Pit Mine. Building the teleportation circle was an imperative mission. What he cared about was the reward of the Dragon Pit Mine. The Dragon Pit Mine meant that this was a huge mine, and the output might be beyond imagination. The Dragon Pit meant that this was a huge pit related to dragons. It might be a pit formed after a dragon died. The reward of the Dragon Pit Mine was definitely a super valuable reward, but the type of mine was not clear. He did not know if it was because he was too used to chain missions, but he always felt that some of the rewards of the smoke mission and the content of the mission were related. The man-eating tree dragon elf has not been found. Emily is leading the giant elephant orders of chivalry to dig 3 feet into the ground to find it. Could they have dug the Dragon Pit Mine by chance? The birth of the dragon elf is inseparable from dragons. There should be no living dragons on the Flame Island. Maybe the man-eating tree dragon elf evolved by relying on the corpse of a dead dragon? There was no record that the great elf could evolve into a dragon elf by picking up corpses, but the man-eating tree dragon elf was a confirmed existence in the smoke mission. Its evolution showed that it must have come into contact with dragons. I'm really looking forward to it. If it's the corpse of a dead dragon, it's fine. At most, it will add a mine. But if it's a living dragon, won't it increase my combat power? I still have 2 enchanting dragon soul fruit. As long as it's not a dragon like the invisible dragon that can see through the fruit and has a strange spiritual battle, it can basically be subdued. He now wanted to use the enchanting dragon soul fruit to subdue any dragon he saw. Ever since he dug out the emerald dragon's hind legs, he had a hunch that there would be no shortage of enchanting dragon soul fruit. With a little research, he might be able to plant a soul fruit tree. Since there was no shortage of fruit, of course, he would use it casually. He would use one whenever he saw a dragon. At this time, it was time for the main course of the banquet. Sapphire Grand Duke picked up his wine glass, stood up, and said loudly, "Today is a day of great significance. His Highness List has shocked the Eagle Kingdom in the battle of dragon slaying and will certainly create a new era of the sea. Let us wish His Highness List glory and invincibility." His Highness List glory and invincibility. The nobles of the Blue Blood Alliance raised their glasses and stood up, echoing Sapphire Grand Duke's wishes. You're tuning in to the Phoenix Knights YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.